Check, check, check. Running into some technical difficulties, man. I had to restart this program, so I apologize for that. Sorry for the lack of sound. I apologize for that. This is something eventually that I'm going to have to clip. So I apologize for all that. Now we here. Now we're ready to go. We rolling with Rush, man. So anyway, I wasn't really saying much other than going through the roll call like I normally do, but I'll forego the roll call for now. But happy 4th of July. I don't call it the 4th of July, although, I mean, that's an actual date, but I don't celebrate the holiday because, I know that black people were not independent in these here United States. In 1776, when these Euros declared themselves to be independent from the crown in England. So it's a 4th of July as far as I'm concerned. Ain't nothing for us to be popping fireworks about, celebrating and, cahooting around like, we did something during that, segment in time or that moment in time. So I'm not a fan or a believer in that. So today what I did is, we're going to have a discussion with Mr. Amiri, and he's on the stream at the current moment. What's up, Amiri? How are you today?
Hey, how you doing?
What's going on?
Nothing much. I can't call it.
Okay, so, let's just get right to it, man.
Okay.
I called you on the show because we had some unfinished conversations that we were having when we were on BGS's show, okay? And I wanted to bring you on this show. I mean, I know you've been going back and forth with some people,
Right.
here in the manosphere or whatever the case may be, the black manosphere, in fact.
Mm-hmm.
And, I don't know what, your differences of opinion are related to mine. I really haven't had the opportunity to have an in-depth conversation with you about anything.
Right.
Okay? So this is not rehearsed. We don't know each other. I don't know you on Facebook. I don't know your media profile. I don't know anything about you. Okay?
Right.
Nothing other than the conversations that we've had, on BGS's show. So I don't know anything. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So I know there's a lot of name calling and a lot of ad hominem kind of argumentation going around.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So, but I ain't into that shit.
Right.
I don't do social media beef.
Right. Right.
I mean, I'll call somebody out. I'll drag a few people out here and there, but like, I don't start issuing insults, especially to black men.
Right.
I'll go off on some white boys real quick. I might even slap one or two of them motherfuckers. You understand?
Okay.
But, when it comes to beef with black men, I have had it, but it's been real life beef. It ain't been no social media beef. So if I feel like if I'm beefing with a motherfucker, it's like that on site type shit. You understand what I mean?
Yeah, I understand where you're coming from.
So, but I called you on here because, I wanted to know, in an unadulterated way, okay? What is your actual position socially and politically and philosophically? Now, I want you to present, and I've given you ample opportunity. I think it's been 2 weeks, since, I asked you what your position actually is, okay? And I want you to exposit, to detail, to outline, adumbrate your position devoid of critique and criticism of any view. I just want to know, what is your positive view? What is it politically that you have to tell us that's sophisticated and intellectual? And I saw the logo that you used in the email, okay? So, so what sophisticatedly and intellectually do you have to tell us about race, class, and if you desire to get into it, because it seems like this is what, the whole, you know, the whole fucking, you know, controversy is surrounding the issue related to gender. Okay? So give us some sort of synopsis of what it is that your viewpoint is. And I want to hear it.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you for you know, for bringing me up. In spite of all the noise and the chatter that's going around, because I understand that it's, you know, certain things being said about me and stuff like that. But that's neither here nor there. But what I want, my views on these things are just simply that you know, here in the 21st century, I think modern Black men are the first generation of Black men who actually have an opportunity to use their creative will to improve their community, the quality of life of Black people generally, and to improve their status socially and politically. And that's, and just from my view, it seems that we're squandering this opportunity. We know since the election of Barack Obama in 2008, there's been a white backlash, and it's happened in spurts, but it's been a continuous theme ever since then. And this is something that is just true of America historically, that whenever Black people make progress or are perceived to make progress, there's a white backlash. When Barack Obama became president, all of the state governorships, municipalities, local governments, they all rewilded themselves. It seems as though, you know, white supremacy for the most part went on alert. This is when we started seeing the high profile killings of Trayvon Martin, Michael Brown, amongst others. And so, you know, we just have to be cognizant and aware of that. So that's basically how I filter things. I'm always looking at that, looking at it through that lens, because that is the primary thing just within America's history. It's always been the whole race thing. Now we can talk about, you know, class and even gender and how those things interrelate and intersect, but we know ultimately that's where the rubber meets the road at in you know, in American society. I think politically, the previous generation, I guess you would call it the boomer generation, they didn't really do a good job of using that political capital that they gained from the civil rights movement to move the ball of racial progress forward for the future generations. That's socially, politically, economically. I was reading something the other day, and even now in 2022, Black home ownership is at the same rates it was at in the 60s before they created the Fair Housing Act. I think that speaks volumes, because when you're talking about economy, wealth building, and things of that nature, it's all about home ownership. That's the way we build wealth in capitalist society in America, is through home ownership. And you know, like I said, the previous generations just didn't do a good job, in my view, of utilizing that political capital to get something done for the greater good of the collective of Black people. When I just take a look at the landscape of what's going on social media, it's you know, a lot of, you know, as I've termed it, gender banging. We don't pay enough attention in my view to these very pertinent real world issues. One thing I try to do is I try not to be too hard on Black people, specifically Black men per se. I try to, you know, be measured in my critiques, because if we want to talk about any metric of manhood that's just been established in the capitalist America's framework, you know, I've met those benchmarks and I've exceeded them. And you know, that's not something that was easy to do. I've come up under many of the same issues that were all common with coming up in the hood, coming from, you know, broken home, disparate families and stuff like that. But still, somehow, some way, I was able to do what I needed to do for my family. A family was something that I wanted very early on in life, and a lot of that had to do with the programming that I would see on TV, like the Cosby Show, Family Matters, I think it was called TGI Fridays. Thank God it's Friday. Family friendly television programming. And so the first chance I got, as soon as I turned 18, that's what I set out to do, because that was the defining theme for my life. I grew up in a family of 8. I was the second to youngest. I have 5 sisters, 3 brothers. So that close knit family environment, mom and dad thing, that's something that I wanted. And so I just went about establishing that and making those choices and decisions to have that. Right. And so now in our modern time, we don't have, family building principles or family values at the forefront of any of our discourse as it relates to anything, politically, economically, socially. A lot of what I find is there's a lot of individualism. This whole idea of, well, I'm an individual, people want to divorce themselves from the group. They just thinking about in terms of what's better for themselves. You see this a lot, and I'm trying to lay out my views and not be too critical, but because I do social commentary, I'm always looking at something with a critical eye and critique, and so I'm trying my best not to put that in anything I'm laying out, but I'm just giving my my views on it, right? And so if we see a brother or a man who does espouse some level of family building principles, family values, things of that nature, we want to attack that. There are those who will attack that person, who will attack that man, who will attack his masculinity. They will attack his manhood. They'll attack his wife. They'll attack his children. We don't even understand how to be respectful. What have we lost as men? And this is the major bone of contention that I have with.
Wait. Now I ask you, I understand that at some point you want to get into negative expository.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
We're going to cover those bases. Okay.
Okay.
However, I want to know, devoid of critique and devoid of, response, I wanted to, get some clear outline of what your view is. And I think that, for the most part, I mean, you've given that, because then you began to maneuver into the area of critique. So I think that you've been there. Okay. I think you've adumbrated your viewpoint. Okay. Now it sounds like to me, to some degree, you're a black nationalist. That's what it sounds like to me. Okay.
Yeah.
You now, tell me if I'm wrong. You are of the opinion that black folks need to develop some unified political consciousness and act on that consciousness in order to improve the lot of the collective of black folks. So I assume that that's what your viewpoint is, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And you said that, this is an opportunity. I mean, the current time is an opportunity in which we could utilize our collective power in order to make collective improvements, right? I think that's also something that you said. Now, I do have some questions to ask about this, right? Because one of the things that you mentioned, you talked about Barack Obama, okay? And I think the way that you talked about Barack Obama, it seemed as if, that event, his election to the presidency of the United States, was some sort of net gain for all black men in American culture and society. I mean, it almost seems as if, we had overcome, like Martin Luther King Jr. said, we shall overcome. Seems like, we were supposed to have, been gaining momentum as black people. And, this is a figurehead of Barack Obama. He's iconic, emblematic of black excellence and so on and so forth, right?
Right.
So that's one of the things you said. But then you talked about the backlash immediately after Obama. Now,
Right.
there's several things I want to say, about Barack Obama in relation to, him being the president of the United States and the expectation that, it was a symbol or a sign or an indication of progress. I really don't think that it was that at all. I think he was just a token Negro who was palatable to white people. He had the comportment of an average white person. He had the education and the family upbringing of an average white guy. And he, was able to, basically fulfill a kind of fake promise. It was a Pyrrhic victory. It wasn't a real victory for black folks. And one has to ask oneself, what did Barack Obama do for black people that can be put into tangible metrics, that can be put into concrete, terms, something that all black people can understand beyond and above that of symbolism and imagery and tokenism.
Right. Well, I agree with you there. I'm just saying this is how they perceive it. Like those forces who may have become dormant or lackadaisical in their race thinking. What I'm saying is that the election of Barack Obama just put those people on alert, and ever since then, there's been a white backlash, and and even if they wanted to do him harm, because they couldn't get to him, they'll just do harm to those they could get to. Like I said, this isn't a coincidence that you've seen these high profile killings. Just the other day in Akron, Ohio, a young black man, 25 years old, unarmed, was gunned down 60 times by the police. And this is just part of a historiography of America. Whenever we do make progress or are perceived to make progress, there's a white backlash, and I think we're still in that time of this white backlash.
Okay, so another thing, I just got some questions for you before we, because we're gonna get into the negative critique. Okay. And all I can go off on is what I've heard you say in the context of the conversation we had on BGS's channel. Okay. I really don't know what you said elsewhere. I don't know the kind of argumentation you've gotten into. I don't know the nitpicking and the back and forth bullshit you might have gotten into with other individuals. That's neither here nor there. But what I want to do is to, have you give me some sort of clarification on what you said about boomers. Okay. So one of the things you said is that boomers basically dropped the ball. They had an opportunity to push progress forward for black folks collectively, but somehow they all let us down. They didn't do a good job. Their generation somehow failed. Okay.
Yeah.
Now my response to that is, you do know what the boomers era actually is, right?
Well, maybe I don't. Maybe you can enlighten me on that.
Okay, so the baby boomers were typically born between 1946 and 1964. Okay, or they, were young adults during the 40s and the 60s. Okay. Or one could argue, roughly, between the mid or the early 1940s and 1964. Okay. So that's the era of the boomers, okay? They were young during that time. Now, one could argue, what the fuck these guys had the civil rights movement.
Yeah, I misspoke. And I'm talking about specifically since the civil rights era. I don't know what generation you would call it. What generation is that? It's not Gen X, is it?
No, it's not Gen X. What's the era immediately after the generation after the boomers? Let me look this up. Generation after the boomers. I think it's Generation Z.
Generation Z? Okay.
I'm not really actually all that clear on the classifications of
Yeah, me either. I get
no,
it
no,
mixed up.
we're actually Generation X. That's what we are. Generation X. That's what the
Generation X.
fuck
Yeah,
we are. Okay.
that's the ones I'm
So
talking about. Man.
Generation X. Okay, so you know that's our generation, right?
Well, it's our generation. I mean, you know, I'm
I
not.
mean, so you would have to include yourself in that group of individuals who are black who actually didn't do shit related to pushing the collective cause of black folks, forward.
Okay.
So I
Now,
mean,
what area is that?
what my view is who can you blame but yourself? I
Well,
mean,
well, hold on, hold on. I want to, because I'm not, like I said, I'm not real sure on the categorizations. So, what is the Generation X era? What's the time period?
okay, so I'm looking it up now, and it says the Generation X time frame is people who were born or who were living as young people from 1965 to 1985. Now,
Okay.
I include myself in that generation.
Okay.
Okay, so I don't know how old you are. I don't know what your age is, but they say the Generation Z is the post-millennial generation, and the millennial generations are the kids who were born and who are young, from 1985 to 2000.
Okay.
So I mean, so my view is the boomers actually fucking, they engaged in civil rights, nonviolent civil rights action, which actually brought about the Fair Housing Act, the Civil Rights Act, the Voting Rights Act. So I'm not saying that there wasn't, every generation has bleeding and blending. You understand? So,
There's a bleed off. Now, go ahead. I'm listening to you.
no, I mean, every generation bleeds and blends into one another. So, I mean, you can create a hard and fast demarcation line with a date. But what I'm arguing is, I mean, I would consider my father to be a baby boomer. Okay. My father is 85, 87 years from 85. I don't know his exact age because I can never remember my siblings or my father's exact birthday, but I know the day it falls on. But I mean,
Right.
I would consider him a boomer. Okay, I would consider my mother to be a boomer. I mean, my mother and my father were actually out there doing some shit in order to bring about justice for black folks.
Mm-hmm.
Now, my viewpoint on it is, I think, I did a show about this shit, okay? Directly after the civil rights movement, black folks were on nation time. We were all for and about black nationalism.
Mm-hmm.
But then it all came to a halt.
And why did it come to a halt?
Well, it came to a halt, for one, because of integrationism
Okay.
and tokenism, okay? Which, one could argue that was the promise of the civil rights movement to begin with.
Yeah,
Okay.
and another main contributor was the black capitalism that was espoused by the Nixon administration actually they created that whole framework as a way to check the black nationalist spirit and sentiment that was prevalent amongst black people even at that time. And it's something that we fell for hook, line, and sinker. This is why I gristle when I hear black people claim to be capitalists. That's one of the reasons why.
So, I mean, but that was part and, parcel of what the civil rights movement was all about. It was about inclusion.
Yeah.
It was about fulfilling the promise that, all of the rights granted and allocated to white folks could be also allocated towards black folks.
Mm-hmm.
And, I have an issue with neoliberalism and tokenism. I do. I have an issue with that. But the collective consciousness of black folks and the whole, idea surrounding nation time, it all collapsed. Now, first of all, you had COINTELPRO, No, you know,
Mm-hmm.
they basically fractured and divided the black community and the black nationalist organizations through direct violence.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a lot of guys, you know, they talk the nationalist talk, but they really actually don't walk the black nationalist walk. Okay, now you got different ideas. I mean, we go look at the show I did on black nationalism. We kind of outline and go through various understandings and various manifestations of black nationalism, various ideals that people have about it. Okay, because on the one hand, you can look at it as like a militaristic kind of ideal or ideology whereby black folks need to develop their own independent nation apart and, you know, distinct from that of white America.
Right.
Or you can view it as something that's more, you know, of a sentiment, something more of a kind of political solidarity. Okay.
Right.
But all of that collapsed. Now you had people who were, you know, promoting both the solidaristic kind without actually, you know, being obligated or feeling obligated to develop an independent nation state. But then you also had those people who were calling for an independent nation state and who had guns and, you know, a paramilitary type of hierarchical structure, and they were ready to get it in.
Right.
So, you know, my viewpoint on it is, you know, well, it's a lot of black nationalist ideologues out here who call for solidarity.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that, you know, one goes each of these kind of viewpoints go hand in hand to some degree. If you don't have people on the fringes pushing for and advocating for black solidarity in a radical way, in a hierarchical military type fashion, you're not really actually going to see any emanation of solidarity on the ideological or the more, you know, just the plain political solidaristic type. You're not going to get it.
Right.
Okay. And my viewpoint on it is there are no paramilitary black organizations today that's putting in work. I mean,
Right.
They might call themselves that. They might have guns. They might march and go around and do some things here and there. But there's no more Black Panther parties out there. There's no more Deacons of Defense out there. Okay? There's no more, you know, Muala Karinga type, you know, organizations out there. You know, the shit just doesn't exist anymore.
Right.
So a lot of guys are calling for this. But then the question is, where are the actions? And then not only where are their actions, right? Where is their where are their headquarters? Where is their literature? Where is their organizing force? Where is it? It just seems to me to be absolutely absent. Now it's one thing to, you know, try to recruit brothers to be down with this kind of cause, and then you can show up and show out and let people see your work. And then it's another thing to be an armchair black nationalist calling for people to, you know, engage and abide by these kind of radical principles, but, you know, you just do so, you know, in the confines of your own mind. It's like, okay, well, that's cool. I understand what you're saying. It sounds nice, great ideal, but what the fuck are you doing? Why should I follow you down this path if there's nothing tangible for you to actually have me buy into?
Okay.
So yeah.
Okay.
But I'm not done. But I want you to, you know, respond to that.
Well, no, I mean, I get that, and I understand that. You know, that view on it, that there's a difference between, you know, walking the walk and talking the talk. You know, just with, you know, the way we live, the way we communicate, the way we put out information in the 21st century is we all use social media. Like whatever you want to try and do, if it's starting a business, whatever the case is, you're going to use social media. And so just with the era that we're in, we got to look at it too. Like this, your black nationalist message isn't taking place in a vacuum. There are a lot of other ideologies and philosophies out there that you have to compete with. And because we don't see or feel this overt racism like they used to back in the 60s, where you have a Jim Crow going on and stuff like that. It's the law of the land. It kind of makes it more challenging to build um to build the the will and the force to organize mainly black men up under a black nationalist mantra with a black nationalist agenda. I think, you mentioned it. You talked about integration, because uh, we've been integrated, socially integrated. And keep in mind, even while I'm saying this about integration, I am a pro-integrationist. I believe it was the right move to make at that time. But because we have access to modernity, leisure, we're distracted, bred in circuses, it's kind of hard to build that political will to organize brothers up under. I mean, here, even within the discourse, there are individuals who will deploy that terminology, pro-black, black nationalists. They'll deploy it as if it's some type of pejorative, as if there's something wrong with the black man espousing a pro-black or black nationalist view. Now, my politics, the way I've defined my politics, is pro-power politics, meaning every action that's taken is either for the acquisition or maintenance of power. I believe that's the way we should move collectively as black people. And this is why I mentioned the older generations, because what you have right now, especially within the political um, uh, apparatus, you have the Congressional Black Caucus, and all they've essentially been is a rubber stamp for these leftist movements. No matter how far to the left they are, they rubber stamp those leftist movements, and they don't get anything done for their constituents, who are by and large black. And just to be honest, it's time for those individuals to go. But in order to build that type of will and then action behind that will, the people have to be engaged enough with what's going on in terms of politics to really give a damn about it. Like, we see Yvette Carnell, we see Antonio Moore. They've been talking about reparations, the ADOS movement, and the need for a new black politics. But I was saying that in 2017 on Facebook, and I was pretty much lambasted by others who so happen to be black and who so happen to be male, as if that was some type of far out thinking, and that's not what we need, even in the 21st century. Like, even if you want to talk about integration, the fact of the matter is we haven't really been integrated. We're just as segregated as we've ever been. We're segregated spatially. We have the highest segregation index of any other ethnic group, which means when we're not only segregated, we're isolated. The schools are just as segregated as they've ever been. We all know what it is. You go to a black neighborhood, all you see all over the place is liquor stores and churches. That's all you see. But
so let me interject right here. So I'm giving you time to expound. Okay. I want to check with some of the people here are commenting about, and it might have it might be able to carry us further in the conversation, because that's what this is. This ain't no debate. Now, if you show me respect, I'm gonna show you some respect. I know, I'm not a send off. I don't, I'm my own fucking dude. Like, I'm not like part of the G unit and I'm motherfucking Lloyd Banks. And if I don't do what the fuck 50 say, then all of a sudden, you know what I'm saying? I'm like, I'm about to get cut off or nothing like that. Like, if you respect me, I'm gonna sit down and have a conversation with you. I'm gonna tell you where I think I agree or disagree. Okay. But so at the end of the day, there's a woman by the name of, I think, Dubai Felicia. So, I mean, I know that's a pun. Dubai Felicia, by Felicia, whatever the case may be. She says, or he, who knows nowadays, but what is out there, what came out of the boomer counterculture? And, my answer to that is simple. You got civil rights. Of course, civil rights to me is just as tangible as, say, for example, natural rights, which a lot of people, set their clock by. Like, oh, well, I have natural rights, and all of this shit is political. All of it is, basically deep-seated and embedded in legalese and political ideology. But for the most part, I think what came out of it was it put an end to segregation. Yeah, I mean, just think about it. Imagine having to go to a damn colored bathroom today. You don't even think about that. It's not something that you have in your mind because other people sacrifice their bodies and put their dicks on and their breasts on the chopping block so that you can go and piss in a regular toilet. Okay? You didn't have to walk into the back of the hotel in order to get accommodations. Your ass can go to any hotel anywhere and have a seat. Damn near. I mean, there are some places where, I would question your practical wisdom if you went there and, if you want to be around a bunch of scathing haters, then, that's on you. But I mean, for the most part, and I do understand that there's a difference between de jure and de facto conditions that obtain in the real world. So, I mean, even though they gave us civil rights, they're, like Amiri said, and if you're right on some issues, I'm going to give you credit for it. Like if there's a white backlash, then they're going to match your strategy with a counter strategy. This is how power actually works. It doesn't rest. It doesn't, you can't breathe a sigh of relief when you're playing a political game. And it's deeper than just politics in the traditional American sense of politics. We're talking about the game of life itself. That's what the fuck we playing here. A lot of people don't think we playing this game. They think, okay, well, I'm just gonna do me, like you said. A lot of people are embroiled in neoliberalism. And this is what I want to talk about, Brother Neil. Thank you, Brother Neil, for chiming in and, having that comment to make. He says, basically, liberalism neutralized Black nationalism at the end of the 60s. And I think that he's correct there, okay? It never recovered after the 70s. So you had Jesse Jackson during the National Black Convention in Gary, Indiana, yelling out, what time is it? It's nation time. And you had men there, women there. You had, blacks from politics there. You had activists there, Amiri Baraka. You had entertainers there, Harry Belafonte and all that kind of shit. I mean, all black folks were there, okay? But one of the things you have to be cognizant of when you're talking about Black nationalism at that time frame was the optimism they had about things that were going to change, and they thought that they were going to change for the better. A lot of them did. But they fought their fight. They sat on the bench after they did what they did, okay? So now you're saying the next generation didn't actually come in the game and score any points. Okay? They kind of went out there and the other team was able to, after the so-called starting bench, the starting roster, after they sat on the bench for a minute, then, they scored. Okay? But here's the problem though, okay? Here's the issue. You had deindustrialization, okay, which took jobs away from a lot of working class black folks. You had the financialization of the markets, which began to take place. Like this is impacting and affecting white folks, not just black folks, okay? But as I told you before, when white people got a cold, black people got COVID-19, okay? So they took the work out and outsourced it, and they created a system where the CEOs and the CFOs could buy back stock in the company and then split it and damn near double their profits. And so they started to pay these administrators and these white collar guys at the top of the economic rung. They began to pay them in ways that they hadn't before. And they didn't pay, I'm talking about the Fed and Congress. They didn't make sure inflation, which we're suffering from right now, they didn't really actually take care of the inflation issue. All they did was just print more and more fiat money, which eventually at some point you got to pay for. But I mean, I don't want to get into economics right this second. But another big factor that led to, a decline of black nationalism was feminism, okay? And if you're talking about black nationalism, you have to understand, you can't have a nation if you don't have families within the nation. I know you're aware of this, right?
What you just said?
A nation starts with the strength of its families.
Right.
I mean, the black nationalist organizations understood this. This is something you understand, okay? Because you made mention of it, okay?
Right.
So, like, there was, like, I even covered this at, at some point where it had begun to be discussed amongst black nationalist organizations, okay, what are going to be the roles of men and women in the context of nation building? Okay, how can we be autonomous and be holistic in our approach to self-governance? And so they came up with, a plan for what men were supposed to be doing, what women were supposed to be doing, okay? And for the most part, black women rejected it.
Okay.
And you could say a small class of black women rejected it. That may be true to some extent, okay? Because I'm not saying that there aren't any black women who want to get married and don't have family values. I think some of them do. But by and large, I mean, what you're beginning to witness is the effects of the new kind of liberalism and the new kind of politics that black people unwittingly stepped into. So at the same time that deindustrialization was beginning to occur, you also had, on the other hand, black people moving from the South during the Great Migration, to the Midwest and to the West and further north, and they were corralled into ghettos. But what happened when these people moved into these ghettos was basically you had the welfare programs. And these welfare programs created these fissures between black men and black women.
Now, why did the welfare program create those fissures?
Well, I mean,
because
the answer, I mean, either we can bullshit about this or we can talk about this the real way, bro.
I'm asking because ultimately what we're talking about is we're talking about the economics and unfortunately, because of the deindustrialization and stuff like that you're mentioning, this just made the black man's role in the family and in the home much more precarious. I mean, that's just the reality at the end of the day.
But this is what black men in the manosphere have to say about black men in the family. Okay. Now, of course, as you know, black men lived through slavery.
Right.
You can't be the head of a family being a slave. I mean, the person who's the father, if you want to talk about patriarchy, is the fucking owner of the plantation. He's the father. The mother of the plantation is the missus, and her daughters or whatever the case may be, and her nieces or whatever, her extended family that are women. And the children are black folks or the animals, the sheep, the chicken, the cows. No real distinction or differentiation from flora and fauna as it pertains to black folks, okay? So there are no black men. There are black sperm donors, the studs, the bearers of seed. And then you got women, but they're not actually able to occupy in a normative way any embodiment of masculinity or femininity, or I think the better way to articulate that is to say they were neither men or women. They weren't men or women.
Right.
Okay? Black men were called boys.
Mhm.
Okay.
And they were on plantations. They were denied pants.
Okay. So there's no family structure there. Okay.
Right.
Now, I mean, there's a loose, disjointed kind of family structure in which, you know, black people bonded and stuck together as much as they could, but they were dominated. Okay, I'm not saying that marriages didn't obtain during slavery; they did. However, the situation in which a family existed that was black during slavery, it was precarious because at any moment the so-called patriarch of the black family could be sold off to another plantation or his wife or any of his children. So there was no actual governance by a man, a black man of any kind of family, all right, during slavery. Okay.
Okay.
Now, then you have the Civil War. Many black men go off to fight for the Union side under, the promise that they would be free after having, fought this war.
Right.
And many of them did become free. And of course, you had a free black population that existed during that time frame as well. I mean, many blacks were free. I mean, not a whole hell of a lot of them, but I mean, in terms of a percentage related to the black slave population, but you had a large number of free blacks. Okay. And they may have had families and may have tried to imitate or kind of, create some sort of functionality within the domain of their own private lives. I'm pretty sure they married and had children and shit like that. Okay. But I mean, that immediately after the Civil War, there was the era of Reconstruction. And I'm pretty sure you're well aware of that.
Yeah.
Okay. So here's a time frame in which the fetters were loosened. The chains, a couple of links were taken out of the shackles so that, black people could breathe a little more easily. Okay. So then you have black men serving on juries, black men, sitting on judgeships, black men being able to hold political offices and shit like that. Okay.
Right.
But like the era of Reconstruction only lasted, maximum 16, 17 years.
Yeah, it wasn't that long.
So, I mean, you start to see black folk trying their best to acclimate to the environment and to try to function, flourish, and thrive within the context of it. Okay? But what happened immediately after the Union troops departed from the South?
Shit, the repatriating white supremacists from the Confederacy came in and instituted Jim Crow in earnest.
Bam. So now you have terroristic threats from white folks.
Right.
Now, and then you have a large portion of black folks beginning to move and migrate away from the South up to the Midwest and to the North and to the West to try to escape some of that terrorism.
Right.
But unfortunately, as they moved to these areas and these locations, what they found was a different form of racial discrimination, many times just as terroristic, or if not more virulent, than the kind of racial oppression they had just run from.
Right.
Okay, so
well, the race, that type of racism that you're mentioning, it's much more paternalistic and passive aggressive in its manifestation, as opposed to what they were accustomed to in the South, and that's basically the common law of what's practiced in today's time. It's just that many of us have fallen asleep or have the blinders on when it comes to that, but it's still there.
But I mean, well, to be quite honest, like Chicago, man, they had white boys, man, cracking black folks' skulls down there, man. And the same kind of thing was happening in the West, in California. Okay,
Right.
You had black folks to move to California, and as the young men would try to go to school, you have white gangs like the Spook Hunters who would assault these. They would accost and assault these young boys trying to go to school. Okay,
Right.
and that eventually led to the formation of gangs in Los Angeles which, you know, a good movie to see about this is the movie, what's the name of that shit? The Bastards of the Party. Okay, I don't know if you've seen that.
No, I've never seen it.
Yeah, you need to see that because it details and outlines the in a concrete and a tangible way the exact way that these gangs actually form. So it wasn't like out of a natural evolution that the gang culture began to arrive in Los Angeles. Because a lot of people will say, oh, well, you know, that's just niggas not knowing how to control themselves and resorting to the lower element because that's what niggas do. No, actually, it was a knee-jerk response that grew and evolved into something for protection. But it moved away from protection and became self-destructive, especially when the leaders of those gangs were arrested and incarcerated. Okay, so you cut the head out of the organization, you take the coach out of the game, and he knows all the plays and he knows all the strategies, and all of a sudden, all you got on the field or a bunch of players who don't know don't know how to actually look at the game from a panoramic perspective. Then you get all kind of chaos and shit like that.
And that's the same argument. Not argument. That's the same thing I was saying about, you know, the civil rights movement and with the assassination of Martin Luther King and things like that. When you smite the shepherd, the sheep gonna scatter.
So ultimately, I want to get to this other thing that you discussed.
Okay.
And that you mentioned, and it's called gender banging. Okay, that's how you made a reference to it. Okay. Yeah. And you know, my viewpoint on, you know, the whole gender issue is this. You ever seen the movie First Blood?
Talking about Rambo?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, I seen it.
The reality of the situation is, man, black men have never, ever. Now, you can say black men are sexist. You can say they're misogynistic. You can say all that, okay? But one thing you can't say is that black men had a unique and a univocal, I won't even call the feminist, black feminist way of thinking univocal, but we've never had a politics that was separate and distinct from that of the entirety of the black collective. Black men never said, okay, well, we need black men to be free and we need to have women barefoot and pregnant in the kitchen.
Right.
I mean, now you've seen black men step up and offer leadership, but you've never seen, you know, like apart maybe, I mean, you can make the case that the Nation of Islam was like that. You can't make the case the SNCC was like that. You can't make the case that the SCLCC was like that. You can't make a case because you have Fannie Lou Hamer, Ella Baker, and just a whole host of women who are actually involved in the process of the civil rights movement and the civil rights struggle. Okay, it wasn't just something that men were doing. It was men and women out there doing it together.
Right.
Okay? However, when you start talking about First Blood, it was these black feminists who ultimately began to say, you know what? Because white women say that they're oppressed, well, we're black and we're oppressed, and also we're women and we're oppressed. So therefore, as black women, we experience double jeopardy. We're doubly oppressed. So we face racism externally, and we face sexism both externally and internally. And so therefore, you know, we're the most oppressed group in the entire fucking country.
Well, I don't see much wrong with what you just laid out in terms of what black feminists were saying. I think their analysis of their predicament within the American social political order is spot on. Now, this isn't to say that they're the most oppressed, but I think that black women do face challenges because they're black, and then they do face maybe a whole nother set of challenges because they're women. That's just the way it is. I don't see much wrong with what they're saying right there.
Well, see, the only issue I have, well, I'm gonna tell you, this is where we differ in our ideals, okay? And I mean, some people hitting me up on the Cash App. I want to take some time to do some housekeeping real quick, man. I want to give a shout out to Ron O'Neill, and he says Amiri needs to admit that he's a black male feminist, and I think he's just done that. I think without a shadow of a doubt.
Even if I was Dr. Neal, what does that have to do with anything? It's not a pejorative. Even if I was, I'm pragmatic in my views. I'm not an ideologue. I'm not dogmatic. I'm pragmatic, and with that being the case, I'm all about doing what works. And so it's just like what Green Gorilla laid out. If black men have never had this disposition, then why adopt it now? Especially if you can't demonstrate that it's going to work in doing what we all want done. What's the point?
Well, it all depends on what you're saying that black men want. I mean, I don't want to go there right this second. I want to do my housekeeping, and then we can get back to this. Okay.
Okay.
All right, Michael Johnson, I want to give you a shout out. Appreciate your donation, sir. Thank you for that. It ain't a lot of housekeeping because ain't a lot of donations. But, you know, I'm glad that y'all here. It's the 4th of July. I'm not celebrating, but I am celebrating my own life, my own thinking, my own independence, my own ratiocinative powers, and so have you. Okay? Otis, shout out to you, brother. Appreciate your support and your help. BGS, thank you very much today, sir. Thank you for your help and your support. Appreciate that. Okay? And Black Quiz at ADOS. He says, I always love the information. Thank you so much, sir. Appreciate your support. Okay? And Destro says, supporting one of our scholars. Thank you so much for your support. All right. Now, here's the problem I have with black feminism, okay? I've said this before. And, you know, I am, you know, a masculinist, okay? And, you know, I've taken feminist courses. I mean, I've taken feminist epistemology, feminist theory, feminist politics. I mean, I can go back to Mary Wollstonecraft, the proto-feminist, and I can move all the way to Kimberly Crenshaw, Brittany Cooper, Christy Dotson, a whole host of figures, because I've actually read this shit, okay? And, you know, I mean, as I was sitting, you know, through these classes, I mean, for the most part, I didn't push back or say anything, you know, derogatory. I kind of felt like, okay, well, much of what they say, you know, I'm just here to learn, okay? But I mean, after reflecting, you know, on their arguments, now, I'm not saying that black women don't have problems that are unique to women that they're facing. Okay. I don't have an issue with that. Okay. But what I do have an issue with is this whole idea that black women, as being black and as being women, you know, are so-called the most oppressed group. And I don't like the second step that they make, which is, you know, because we're the most oppressed group, we have to develop a politics that's purely self-serving. So, you know, we have to look after ourselves first. So as it pertains to black men, cool, fine. You know, I understand y'all getting killed out here. I know you're getting incarcerated. I know you're the most homeless. I know, you know, you the first fired, the last hired. I know that, you know, the most virulent forms of racist aggression are directed towards you. However, you know, because we belong to these classes, we're the most oppressed. And I believe, first of all, like my philosophy, if I was to say positively, I'm a naturalist, okay?
Okay.
I'm not an ideologue. I mean, I do have everybody has ideals. You can't, you know, operate in the world without having ideals to refer to, okay? Right. And to you know, norms to guide the way you think about certain things. So I'm not saying I don't have ideals. However, I believe that whatever ideals that I do have ought to be open to revision based upon empirical evidence that demonstrates things that are contrary to the hypotheses that I make. Okay. However, the problem with black feminism is that it's not empirically rigorous. And this is just feminist philosophy just in general. It's not rigorous at all. Okay, it borrows from Marx, this kind of Manichaean idea that men are oppressive and that women are oppressed, and it points to specific, times in history in which women didn't have the right to vote, or they didn't have, autonomy over their family life, which I disagree with, or weren't able to own property, which I disagree with. Okay, it uses these kind of arguments in order to demonstrate that they need equity, that they need redressing, that they need, quite frankly, that they need affirmative action. And this is just women in general. And the reason I take umbrage with these kind of arguments, okay, and to begin with, from white women, okay, those are the first motherfuckers. I don't trust them as far as I can see them, for real. That's just me. Okay, you can do whatever the fuck you want to do with them. You can date them and marry them or whatever. I just don't trust them. Like wait a minute. Like Bill Burr said, white women, they came over here willingly as colonialists. They willingly engaged in the slave-based project, willingly. Okay, it wasn't like, okay, well, their husbands forced them to hate niggas. Okay, they didn't. Okay, they willingly engaged in the colonial and the slave-based project, willingly. Not only that, after Reconstruction, they were the most staunch advocates of segregationism and Jim Crow. You've heard of the Daughters of the Confederacy, right?
I think I have.
So at the end of the day, at the picnics, which, we talking about the original picnics, not the kind of romantic picnics that you see idealized in popular romantic comedies nowadays. I'm talking about the picnics where it's pick a nigga and hang his ass.
Right.
Okay? You saw white women with beers and Coca-Colas and shit and baskets of food, laughing and smiling just like the white guys. Okay? When you had black kids, this boomer generation who was trying to desegregate the schools, you saw white women out there spitting on black children, boys and girls, just like the white guys out there. So in relation to, this whole argument about, okay, well, we were oppressed and, we didn't have autonomy. You had enough autonomy to develop organizations and to create political action groups. Okay, social, because the Daughters of the Confederacy are a political action group, and they had a great deal of social and political power throughout the South. Okay, to a group of people who actually lost the war. These were a defeated group of men, and these women basically were like, okay, well, it's time for you to pick up your face and get back in the fight. Okay, here's how we do it. So, wait a minute now.
Okay, go ahead.
Not only did white women have political power, they might not have been the face of political power, but they had a great deal of political power. Okay, that's all, as avatars. They use men as avatars. Anybody that doesn't see this, to me, is just absolutely misguided. Like, to think that women don't have the ability to influence decision making is preposterous. But not only that, these women own slaves. They went, there's a book, called They Were Her Property, which basically discloses or uncovers the fact that 40% of the owners of slaves were women. 40%, bro. Right. So this idea, if a slave is property, and they were buying and selling slaves and gifting and bartering with slaves, that means that they had capital. That means that they had some kind of autonomy, okay, in order to make decisions. And then also about this voting shit. First of all, I always say this. When this country was founded, only 6% of the population had the capacity or the ability to vote. Okay, the franchise was allocated to the population after a long period of time, and then after it had actually been allocated, the franchise was expanded the relative value and substance of the franchise had already been minimized. Do you get what I'm saying? So the 6% of the population who actually had the franchise when the country was, first developed, they actually had substantive power. Okay, so because you can't just look at voting in and of itself as some summum bonum of what democracy actually entails, because there's a lot of ingredients that are left out. But I mean, ultimately, you got 6% of the population, man, they making executive decisions. Their opinion actually matters and their vote actually counts. By the time you get to the point where men actually have the franchise, like the vast majority of this universal suffrage movement, the vote really is actually nothing more than like consumer like voting. It's not like going to the fora and debating with your peers and actually having, the capacity to have an impact on governance. So but I don't want to get too deep into this. But the whole idea that these women were oppressed and that they didn't have access to social goods and that, like all women were oppressed, all men somehow had benefits and privilege. To me, it doesn't actually adhere to the nuances, and it doesn't dig into the bowels and the entrails of what actually was happening in terms of hierarchy within the antebellum South, Jim Crow South, or the North, or any other place for that matter. And here's what I mean by this. When the country was first founded, and we all know, it was Queen Elizabeth who sent the first English envoys out here in order to set up corporations in the New World, in order to compete with France, the Portuguese, and Spain, okay?
Right.
And that's a woman, by the way, a woman with political power. If you're the queen and you get motherfuckers to come out here and you telling them to go do some unscrupulous shit, well, I mean, that's another idea or another fact that kind of, belies this whole notion that, okay, well, women don't have any power. It's just untrue. But at any rate, you got indentured servants here, man, okay, who, to be quite frank, they were treated often worse than some of the slaves were because they were expendable. They were more expendable than slaves because slaves were property that people wanted to keep and to hold on to. The indentured servants were people whom they wanted to die quickly so they wouldn't have to make good on their promises after their indentures and make sure that they have, parcels of land and shit like that, okay? Right. So you mean to tell me that an indentured servant who doesn't have any political power is a fucking patriarch, who doesn't have a wife, who doesn't have any children, who's working just like a fucking slave is in a tobacco patch? You mean to tell me he has more political capital than a member of elite society that's a woman in fucking Virginia, North or South Carolina? Like, I mean, come on, bruh.
I mean, I understand the nuances that you're talking about. I think who doesn't understand those nuances are the larger male population. Because this is the point that I make when I talk about gender and stuff like that, is a lot of times what we're doing is philosophically and ideologically we're carrying water for the elite, for a group who don't necessarily identify with us, but they'll get us to identify with them through the rubric of gender. So, maleness, femaleness, masculinity, men, women, that type of thing. They do it through class. And they do it through race. I mean, we know that's why race was created. Race was created as a response to Bacon's rebellion, when those indentured servants and those slaves, because of the conditions on the plantation, united and was about to overthrow some shit.
But the question is, it was women who started the gender rhetoric, especially related to their oppression. Okay, now. Okay. Men didn't start this shit, okay? Men actually, like white dudes, you could talk about a small group of white dudes who had political power, who controlled shit. Now, you can refer to them as patriarchs and you can refer to them as people who need to be smashed. Okay?
Right.
I can dig that. I can vibe with that.
Mm.
Okay? But what I can't vibe with is the wholesale categorization of people into categories, right? Like you're going to split half of the fucking black population, half of the white population, half of the Latino population, half of the Asian population, and argue that all of the members of those groups who are male have privilege and participate in patriarchy. That to me is it's absolutely fucking nonsensical. It doesn't make any sense. You can't split entire populations of people into dualisms, like Manichaeanism, and then all of a sudden come up with an accurate interpretation or an objective interpretation of reality. It's fucking nonsensical. It does, but I'm not the one. Like Sylvester Stallone said to his sergeant or his officer when he came to call Rambo in, and he's like, "Rambo, you got to calm down." And you know what Rambo told him?
What?
They drew first blood.
Okay.
We didn't start talking gender nothing. Black men were always working for, this, and I think Dr. Tia Son Johnson calls it a flat blackness. Mm-hmm. What I mean by this is black men have never been gender banking. Not for real. I mean, you could say black men are sexist. That's to be,
Look,
I'll take that. But like, okay, so you got somebody like Ice Cube, okay? I got a plan for Black America. Goes on a damn show with the Queens of Soul on Fox Soul. And he says, hey, look, I got a plan for Black America, okay? I'm meeting with a whole host of politicians. I don't care if they're on the right or the left. I just want to propose what my plan for Black America actually is, okay? And I want you to help participate in it. The first thing they did was they started talking about themselves as not a racial group, but as a unique subgroup of the racial group in relation to them being women. And he said, well, ain't black women black people? And the first thing they said was, no, that's not true.
Okay, I don't have a problem with that. I was in agreement with Ice Cube's approach, with what he was trying to do there politically. So a lot of things I'm not going to fall on the side of feminists with. I just look at things, like I said, pragmatically, and I just understand that there are going to be certain issues, certain things that's going to be unique to the black female experience that black men can't necessarily speak to. And that's fine, and it's vice versa. It goes both ways.
Now, as long as you're willing to say that the shit goes both ways,
yeah,
then I can reach a modus vivendi with you about that. Okay? But what I can't meet you on a modus vivendi with is the idea that, okay, just because of a heuristic, which is what I think it's an ideology, a heuristic, a narrative, a discourse, if you want to use post-structuralist language, okay? I don't even know if you know that, but I'm assuming you know something about it.
I know a little something about it.
Okay, so you know a little something about it. And so ultimately, if you want to use that kind of language, French philosophy or linguistic, cultural studies thinking or ideals related to that discipline, I'm like, look, your narratives don't even have any basis in reality. It's not an empirically based area of inquiry, okay? Now, I mean, I'm not saying that women as a whole don't have issues that they have to face in the world. I'm not saying that. Even white women, I'm not saying that they don't, okay? I'm not saying they don't. However, when it comes to this issue of male privilege, I take umbrage, I have an issue with them asserting or having, the argument that, okay, because you got a small group of men who actually have access to the reins of power, that all men have access to these reins of power by default. And I particularly have a problem with them saying black men have access to these reins of power on the account of them being men, when shit, They didn't act, black men didn't actually become regarded as men until after the fucking Civil Rights Act. They still was called boys.
Yeah, but the thing is that this is the same thing I told Dr. Tommy Curry. These same brothers will identify with it though. See, the way I look at it is, and I get what you're saying about empiricism and stuff like that, but privilege doesn't have to be empirical for it to be privilege. Privilege can be a function of belief systems, thoughts, actions, and it can be interpersonal. And so when feminists are talking and using that type of rhetoric, I think that's more or less the vantage point they're coming from. And the framework that I'm using to make that analysis is what W.E.B. Du Bois said when he said the psychological wage of whiteness. So there's a psychological component that exists that creates this whole thing of privilege. And a lot of the arguments that you're making right now, even though I do agree with them, those are the same types of arguments that the everyday run-of-the-mill white person will make to try and suggest they don't have white privilege, when we know that that's false. Just the very notion or belief of you believing you're superior to a human being gives you privilege. It is that privilege. It doesn't have to be empirical.
Well, we'll put it this way, man. Okay, so let's just assume for the sake of argument, man, black men think that they're better than black women. Okay? You're arguing that this mindset, this self-important way of thinking manifests into the oppression of women, black women in particular, because, I mean, they believe that they should be in control. They should believe that they should run shit, right? So this somehow, hold on.
Okay, yeah.
Black men feel like they should run shit. So this is basically the hegemonic masculinity argument, okay? It's the idea that, okay, I have a right by nature to be the head of the household. Like, so it's almost like a mind state of chauvinism, right? It's a psychological disposition or a belief system, right? Desiderata, some belief system, some desire to fulfill, this idea of, right, I'm the father, I'm the man, I run and control my territory, right? I control and run my household.
Well, go ahead.
But here's the funny thing about this shit, right? This is what you got to be mindful of, right?
Okay.
So black men can believe the fucking moon is made of green cheese. Okay? Black men can believe that the White House is black. Black men can believe that, that money grows on trees. It's not going to actually make it so. It's not going to make, if I believe that the moon is made of green cheese, my belief, it could manifest into some aberrant behavior. Could, okay? But let's talk about the behavior that we're actually discussing and questioning. See, my problem is when you start to talk about people's belief systems and how belief systems make people act, then what you need to have is some sort of concrete account of the effects of that belief system on structures, on institutions, on policies, on laws, and the way that they actually behave to other people. Now, we could talk about, this is why I don't like structure. First of all, I'm a philosopher, okay?
Right.
I like philosophy to some degree, but I think philosophy, if it's left unchained and it's not reined in by empirical methods of falsification, then I believe it just fucking runs amok. All you can do is just start saying anything. Like, all you can do is just, you can make arguments, man, forever and ever and ever and ever, and you never have to demonstrate the verity of those arguments in a way that can be universally either affirmed or denied. And that's my issue with philosophy, bro.
Right. Now, I get that, but also too, I at the same time, I won't overvalue empiricism, because they've always used those types of methods and made these claims of black men's per se inferiority being empirical. They have a whole book and study on it called the bell curve, and people will buy into it and believe it, and that's supposed to be empirical. So I never put too much emphasis on what's empirical.
But bro,
I think it's open. Well, go ahead.
we're talking about a method of inquiry.
Okay.
Like, I mean, you know, we could talk about, you have to have, like, I don't know if you know anything about epistemology, okay?
Mm-hmm.
But you have to have a means by which to acquire information such that you can say, I have, because everybody has beliefs, okay? I mean, anybody can have any kind of belief, right?
Right.
But does the belief that you have approximate the truth? And can it be justified such that others can verify its truthfulness and its justifiability? Like, I mean, and look, I can look at the empirical data of the bell curve and determine whether or not there's any verity in what he's saying about it. I can go back and use the same kind of methods that he utilized in order to retrace his steps in order to either affirm or deny the truthfulness and the justifiability of the claims that he's made. Now, I'm not saying that empirical methods cannot be misused. They can be, okay? But I think that there's a lot more room for distortion, incompleteness, and non-verifiability in just creating ideals and arguing endlessly and ceaselessly such that they can neither be confirmed nor denied. Now, I don't want to, you know, even get into this because, like, if you really,
but I do want to say this though. I mean, you know, just with this, what's took place with the Supreme Court. I mean, anytime you're a part of a group who can have their rights overturned or redacted or undone by either legislative or judicial means, you're a part of an oppressed group.
but
I think that's a fair way. I think that's a fair way to make how we're looking at everything more concrete. If your rights can be rolled back for any reason, then you're a part of an oppressed group, because there's a certain group in the society whose rights can't be rolled back because their rights are seen as inalienable. So I think that's you know, the metric we should use when we're looking at whether people are oppressed or not, if their rights can be rolled back.
Yeah, I don't buy that either, because it's also white women who are anti-abortion advocates, and so
But you know, I mean, if we want to go that green gorilla, you've always had like Stephen Fetchit's coons who would agree, you know, like show them the gun line, boss. Like, so I don't even think that's a mitigating.
But here's the deal, bro.
Okay.
You know, let's take, for instance, first of all, you know, like I understand how abortion actually came to be on the docket of the National Organization of Women, because it was Betty Friedan in the National. I made a video about this shit. Okay, it was two white dudes that came up with the justification for abortion. Now, it was not deemed to be a right. Like, and first of all, you know, like, if you know anything about my political thinking, I just don't agree with the concept of rights. I mean, I talk about them legally, but I don't talk about them in relation to nature. I just don't. Like, I know the social contract tradition. I know about Hobbes. I know about Locke. I know about Rousseau. I know what they argue in relation to rights. But I don't believe, I think like Jeremy Bentham, you know, he's a utilitarian philosopher. Like he said, rights are nonsense. Like this idea of natural rights, it's nonsense on stilts. It's rights are a legal construction, okay, created by people at certain periods of time in order to legitimate power. Okay. Now, I don't think that there's a natural right to abortion. I don't think there's a natural right actually to freedom. I mean, I'm not trying to be ignorant about this. I mean, you have to maneuver in the world, like you say, you have to maneuver in the world for power. Now, if you take it laying down, that's on you. Either as an individual or a collective. But this whole concept of, you know, like, I got a right, that's a philosophical construction based upon a certain time frame. A snapshot in time. It occurred during, especially this idea of natural rights, came out of the Enlightenment era. I've talked about it ad nauseum. I really don't want to get into it because I really don't think that it really fits into what we're talking about here. But look, suffice it to say, you've been having disagreement about the whole nature of abortion and the way that it's supposed to be justified, you've been having disagreement about this shit since Roe v. Wade. Okay? And it's a group of, you got different ways of interpreting the Constitution. I know you know this shit from high school. You got strict constructionists or strict interpretationists, and you got people who have a more loose understanding of what, the Constitution actually permits and allows for. So ultimately, man, like on the right, now you can say what their intentions are. Look, you got white women and white men who are arguing on both sides of this issue. Now, we can talk about it in terms of utilitarian reasoning, deontological reasoning. I really don't want to get into that shit. I just don't. But what they're actually arguing about is this whole notion of the right to privacy. Okay? That's that's the crux of the matter as it pertains to Roe v. Wade. And it's been an issue from the outset. And you got the conservatives. Now, they do have an agenda. I will admit. They have an implicit agenda. Okay? They don't like abortion. It doesn't fit in with their theological vision about, God and country. It just doesn't. Okay? But there are a lot of people who, are pro-life. I mean, it's not just men. Okay? That's the only thing I want to say. Okay? And to say that all women, because they're women, are pro-life, if you go back to the National Organization of Women meeting where Betty Friedan actually put abortion on the docket, it was a highly contentious debate within the context of that organization, and the vote was damn near split. It wasn't like all of these women were univocal and unanimously deciding that abortion was an inherent right for women to have. It just wasn't the case, right? So, this idea that, like, in and of itself, the right to terminate life is or an unborn child or a preborn child, it's like the ultimate indication that, you somehow are suffering from like Marxian alienation, like you're a woman coon, to use your analogy. I don't think that's true, because if that was the case, then all of the women at the National Organization of Women who voted against abortion being on the Bill of Rights for women would have been coons. And I don't think they were coons. I just think that, look, there are some women who think that abortion ought to be within the parameter of rights that women should have. There are some who say, okay, well, we think the sanctity of life is something that trumps this so-called, notion of being able to control my body, so to speak, right? And also, there are ways to prevent being pregnant. Like, this is 2022, man. You can make sure that your partner put a hat on. If you're a man, you can put a hat on. You can go get some contraceptives, some shit like that. I mean, rape is a whole different matter, okay? We ain't even talking about rape. We just talking about how loosely.
Now, that's a component of it. The whole, rape thing that you just mentioned. But we don't have to get into that. But that is a component of the whole, abortion thing.
Yeah, I just, like, at the end of the day, I think that there's good methods of inquiry, and I think that they're less well put together methods of inquiry. And I think I like philosophy. I love it. I have a doctoral degree in it. However, and this is even before me entering into the space of the manosphere. Okay, I've written papers about philosophy in and of itself needs to be reined in. Rationalism, right, and idealism, if left unchecked, can take us too far away from the path of rectitude. And unfortunately, it's one thing to argue these points at a surface level, and then it's, another matter altogether to look at these issues knowing the entire scope and range of the Western philosophical tradition. Now, and I'm not saying like I'm smarter than anybody. It's just that I spent time studying it. You know what I'm saying? Like I could say, okay, like if I'm a musician, I could say, okay, well, this music sounds good. That music doesn't. Right. Or I could say, well, this is my preferred form of music and no theory. And then I could be somebody who studied theory and the whole Western tradition of music. And I can say, okay, this is a better piece of music. than this is. Because I'm operating at a different order of reflection as I think about and ruminate about this issue. Okay, I'm not trying to be insulting or derogatory by saying that shit. All I'm saying is when people utilize post-structuralist thought, I want them to have some understanding, not just of structuralism or post-structuralism, but about the entire scope and range of the epistemological tradition going all the way back to fucking Plato or even the pre-Socratics. I expect for people to have a basic understanding of that and the different ways of viewing the way that people use epistemology to understand metaphysics. Now, I know that sounds really graduated in the way I'm articulating it, so let me break it down for dummies, man, so motherfuckers can understand it. All right? Epistemology is nothing but a method of acquiring information, such that you can have a true justified belief about the world. Metaphysics is the study of the nature of reality, like what's actually real. Okay? Now, I believe in using science. I believe we should use the scientific method. Now, can the scientific method be abused? Yes, it can. But it's up for better scientists and people who are more scrutinizing and people who have more information at their fingertips to be able to point out the weaknesses and the, distortions that people apply when trying to utilize the empirical method. I think it's a self-correcting form of inquiry. Now, I don't think it's the only method of inquiry that should be permissible, but I think, come on, man, if you want to make arguments about you the most oppressed group in America, man, then why can't you account for the fact that you're not the most attacked group? You're not marked for lethality the way other groups, the black men are. Not to be disrespectful to black women, but come on, man, you ain't out here getting fucking killed by the police the most. You're not out here getting incarcerated the most. You ain't homeless the most. Okay? You ain't facing the target like Public Enemy. I know you grew up in the era and knew about Public Enemy. It's a reason why a woman ain't on the target in the scope, bruh. Because they not getting gunned down and shot and fucked up like that. It's just the reality of the situation, man. They're able to fly underneath the radar to a greater degree than are black men precisely because, let's face it, bruh, they're not a threat to the prevailing structure of power.
Okay, now, I not that I disagree with that, but why aren't they seen as much? Why don't they pose the same threat level or aren't?
Because they don't pick up guns and kill motherfuckers, dog.
No, it's not just that. It's because they're women, right?
Bruh.
There's going to be
let's look at the nuances. Let's look at the detail, the bowels and entrails of history, bruh. How many women do you know throughout the entirety of the human fucking existence on this planet? We can look past, like we could take snapshots and utilize Marxian analysis and talk about, how women should be included. I think women should be out there fighting with the M16s and the sub M60 machine guns. I believe, hey, don't leave all the risk up for men. Get your ass out there and fight too. But let's just be real about this shit, bro. In the jihad and in their insurrections and insurgency, you had female suicide bombers. You had kids suicide bombers. They was utilizing everybody. It was a group effort in that. You know what I'm saying? The problem black men are having is that we don't have speaking to this issue, because you brought it right up. Okay. Black men feel like we don't have a collective effort of jihad against these motherfuckers.
From who?
Blank, man. We don't feel like that, bro. First of all, if you're a feminist and you saying, look, I know what intersectionality is. Since intersectionality to me is an appeal to white people to protect them from the boogity niggas. That's exactly what intersectionality is, bro.
Okay, so wait a minute. So now you said we don't have. Say that again. You said we don't have
We don't have at the current moment. We don't have a group of women ready to fucking commit holy jihad for your black nationalist cause, dude. Just the reality.
Brother. We don't. The men. We just not on that type of time period. It's not just the women. It's the men too.
But primarily,
I've never said.
So what I'm saying is, it's the situation is so dire now, right? To the point where we've embraced the system so fully now, right? There is a rift between the life experiences of black men and black women. I'm telling you this right now. Now, you can argue against it. If you're a black nationalist, this is something you got to account for. Okay?
Right.
Because if your family ain't straight, if your house ain't in order, you can't create institutions, whether they be social, economic, whether they be educational, whatever the fuck kind of institution you got to build, you got to have harmony to build it. Okay?
Well, I agree
Now,
with
if you
that.
got bifurcation, and black men didn't create this fucking bifurcation, bruh. This is what we talking about.
So who created it?
First of all, white women created some faux-ass bifurcation. It's fake as fuck to me. Okay? I'm just keeping it 100. I'm gonna keep it a buck. Now, I'm not gonna sit here and play games.
Okay.
White women created the feminist movement largely using the rhetoric of race in order to do it. So basically what they ended up doing was they turned sexism into something that was equivalent to that of racism, which to me, by and large, is fucking laughable if you think about it. Like, women were not transported to fucking America against their will. These bitches got on these boats, man, and came willingly of their own free will and fucking volition. They didn't have to come here. They came here because they wanted to come here. And when they came here, many of these motherfuckers bought into the same kind of racial ideology as the so-called men that they were supposed to be following orders from. Now, if you know anything about women, hey, bruh, you married, dog. Ain't no man alive gonna tell me that women don't have influence over the decisions that men make to begin with.
Of course, I've never said anything to the contrary. I know they do. I've never this, and I tell brothers this in the manosphere that a lot of times the ones who are peddling internalized feminism are them, not me. When I talk about how women have never been outsiders to male power, they'll say I'm simping or I'm being a cook, as some of them have put it. And I'm merely just stating the facts that women have. Listen, when we're talking about feminism, you and I both know that feminism was the movement of elite women because they wanted to share equally in the power of their particular elite male group. Like, we know that. You know what I'm saying?
So if it start to me, as far as I'm concerned,
right.
If it starts all fucked up, it ends up fucked up.
Okay.
You can't cut, like, you can try to mix shit and sugar together and get ice cream, but really all you're gonna get is sweet shit. So what I'm saying is, so what I'm trying to articulate is, look, there are some accounts of feminism that I'm more in agreement with than others. And the problem that I have, there's some feminist philosophy that I think is better than others, okay? But this is a problem because men don't know the distinctions between the various forms of feminism. You got cultural feminism, post-structural feminism, intersectional feminism, radical feminism, equity feminism. You got so many different forms of feminism. It's not a homogeneous ideology or a homogeneous political philosophical tradition. It's heterogeneous. Okay, so you can't fucking lump it all into one category. Like, there are some feminist philosophers that I agree with more than others, but that's the same with male philosophers, okay? Across the board. But here's the deal, man. Mm-hmm. This, like, if you read Curry, you got to understand, man. If you look at history, it's just simple to see, man. You got men who fight wars for the most part. And it ain't because men are fucking making a decision, hey, I want to fight. A lot of men don't want to fight at all. They want to go fucking to the crib and just chill out. Smoke a blunt or drink a beer or some shit. Or wine or whatever the fuck they was drinking back in the day. Ale or whatever the case may be. All right? Mm-hmm. Men don't want to go out there and risk their lives on the account of making a rich-ass dude richer or consolidating his power more. Okay? Right. Unless it becomes a necessity. Unless that group is able to convince the people who go out there as grunts and who put their lives on the line, for the most part, become fodder for cannon, right? They convince them that it's in their interest to do so, primarily on, basically making the other group of people evil, all right? Now, we see this, though, but it's men out there primarily who are putting their dicks on the chopping block and their lives on the line, and women who are spared the risk of war. That's not a privilege to me. Okay? Because most of the guys going out there and fighting are gonna fucking get killed, bro. Or maimed. Or psychologically fucked up. Okay? That's how war is. It's not something that you come away. And a lot of people are basically saying that this is some male activity that men are willingly engaged in because they're toxic. No, it's something that, people are forced to engage in. Otherwise, they get fucking arrested and put in jail or put in prison.
Well, let me say this, because I went over. It was a paper I had, ran across a report, and it was about military efficacy. And in that report, it's kind of highlighting what you were talking about, and it's highlighting just what we were talking about with with feminism, this idea of male privilege and stuff like that. And it just went into how the actual functioning of military is for the how did it put it? For the protection of women and children and maintaining territory. It's not something that's just steeped in this chauvinistic male aggression, masculinity thing like the way feminists will present it. You know what I'm saying? So like I said, I come down on the middle on a lot of things. I don't identify as a. Well, go ahead.
No, but my problem is, look, nobody has ever said that bad things don't happen to women. I've never said that. Like, I don't know any man in the manosphere who would make the case, who would be as oblivious and stupid enough to make the case that bad shit don't ever happen to women or black women. Okay? At the hands of black men and at the society at large. But I mean, like, okay, so you got somebody in, the chat named C. Haynes saying, okay, they used to kill witches. But dog, they used to kill men too. Man, Western culture is brutal, man. Motherfuckers act like women were only being killed because they're women. Like, what happens when men get killed because they're men? That's the shit that people don't understand. It seems like gender only applies to women. And that's an issue that I take with these contemporary scholars utilizing Marxist and post-structuralist frameworks to talk about oppression. I have a problem with that shit, and especially as it pertains to black men, because so here's the deal. Black women are ready to concede. Black feminists and others, they're willing to concede, okay, the early mortality of black men, the violent deaths that black men experience, the hyper-incarceration of black men, the lack of educational opportunity and lack of ability to be able to matriculate through kindergarten on to higher education is problematic for black men. They understand the homelessness levels of black men. They understand the suicidality of black men. They understand that shit perfectly fine and well. But then they turn around and they also understand that black men don't have any institutional power. We have no economic power. We have no political power. And also we have really, actually, to be quite frank, we have no power over our own fucking children. Okay? Now, here's the deal. After having said all of that shit, which is empirically measurable, they'll still go on to say that because they're members of a historically disenfranchised group, quote unquote women, because they are women, qua woman, okay, they'll go on to say that they're still suffering from double jeopardy. And then the question becomes, okay, well, how then? Well, then they go on and they say, well, because black men rape and they beat us. That's your oppression right there. And then they have toxic masculinity. But then when you study the data, it shows and demonstrates, as it pertains to the progressiveness of black men, they're the most progressive group. All you got to do is go look up the research and the studies and you'll find that. Like, do you think that black women should be able to work? Hell yeah, black women should go out there and be able to work. In fact, we already know the truth. Black women always work any goddamn way. They've been working since the plantation.
Yeah, so exactly. So
black, and even when black women didn't have to work, I got an article, man. I forget what state it was in. I think it was one of the Carolinas, where they was like Negro women to be put to work. And why did they have to go to work?
That was in South. I have that article too. That was in Greenville, South Carolina, 1918.
Okay, so they wanted to put black women to work. Damn near 60 years after the Reconstruction, when they had husbands who could take care of their households, you know who was calling for that? It was Becky. It was Miss Ann. It was Karen calling for that because they didn't want to do the goddamn work themselves. Those are the facts, bro. So, but not only that, back to the matter at hand before I move too far away from where I'm trying to go.
Okay.
When it comes down to abuse, when it comes down to sexual assault, when it comes down to domestic violence and all this kind of shit, black men are damn near at the same rate of victimization as black women. And then these same black women will turn around and say that this is the sole reason for which we can basically assert that black men are oppressing black women, because we can't use institutions and power structures in order to articulate that. We can't even use the familial structure in order to articulate that they got patriarchal power, which, by the way, is the way you define it. Okay, I can't understand how if damn near 70, 80% of the custodial parents in the black community are fucking goddamn mothers, how black men have like autocratic power over the family. I just don't get it. But okay, because to be quite honest, most black men are uncle daddies. They come around when they're allowed to, or they come around when it's deemed expedient for them to come around.
Why is that though? Why is because I understand all of the outcomes that you're talking about, these adverse outcomes, but how much of that is the result of that black man's particular behavior or something he's engaged in that he shouldn't have been engaged in?
So you mean to tell me? So you mean to tell me that most of these black men are just some lazy, deadbeat, low life ass niggas that don't want to have relationships with either women or children?
I never said that. I'm just asking.
So my guess is
attributable to that person's individual individual behavior. Like when you was just talking about the violent deaths of black men, but we know that the majority of black men who are meeting these violent outcomes is coming at the hands of other black men. I mean, let's just be real. And so if the black man demonstrates this type of, or deploys this type of violence against himself, then what chance do we think black women stand? So I think it's totally reasonable for black women to maybe highlight how a lot of times they're in communities and in personal spaces with a male group who tend to use violence.
But women also use violence, bro. Like they use it just as often, if not more often, than the men they complain about. Right. This is the issue I have. Like if you're gonna say that you're oppressed on the grounds that the men in your community are violent, then you also have to take account for your own demographic or your population's culpability for engaging in the same kind of fucking dysfunctional behavior. Now, I don't have a problem with admitting that both parties have an issue, but I don't like the way it's categorized as being a male issue.
But it is a male issue though, bro.
It's not a male issue. That's the falsity of it. Look, let me explain to you, bro.
Homicides in the black community. Let's just be real.
Who commits what?
Who commits most of the homicides in the black community?
I'm talking about intimate violence right now. I ain't talking about male on male violence. I mean, across any demographic you'll ever see or any population you'll ever see, there's always going to be more male on male violence in any society. But that's a male problem. It's not a male-female problem.
Well, what I'm saying is that we can make the argument that men are more prone to violence than women.
In what particular domain and in what particular area? You can't just say men are more violent generally, and that's why domestic violence happens and men are just beating up women because they're more violent. That's just not the case.
Well, I never said that. I'm not making the correlation necessarily between violence and intimate partner violence. I'm merely talking about the perception at that point. If black men, for whatever reason, are the ones who are committing most of the violence in the black community, irrespective of anything, that's just
which men in the black community. Because I just did a show the other day that kind of disclosed and detailed the reasons for some of the dysfunctional behavior that you see in the context of our neighborhoods. Now, you're a person that promotes family wholeness and togetherness, correct?
Right. Yeah.
We already know that when you have an absence of fathers, which of course is all their fault. It ain't never a woman's fault. It's always the man's fault because it's some sort of behavior that he's exhibiting. It's never a kind of dysfunction that's environmental. It's not a dysfunctional kind of behavior or a pattern of behavior that evolves out of the welfare state. It has nothing to do with anything other than the niggas ain't shit. which I find absolutely it's not a sophisticated explanation for social phenomena. Is what I'm trying to articulate. Okay,
yeah, but
so all I'm saying is here's the deal, bro.
Mhm.
Here's the deal. All I'm trying to articulate is what black male study scholars are trying to articulate across the board. Namely, you can't, on the one hand, accuse part of a population for being oppressive when the other part of the population is doing the same shit that they're accusing the other part of the population for doing. So if men are violent, and they don't really actually give a fuck about men being violent to each other, because they talk about that peripherally. Okay?
Right.
When they're talking about violence, they're primarily talking about violence experienced by women. They're not talking about the violence that happens inside the intragroup of men, particularly black men. They will mention it in order to make a similar kind of argument that you just made. But I believe that, like, if we're going to be empirically accurate and we're going to actually study a specific kind of phenomena, we need to study it, and we need to use social science in order to do so. That's all I'm asking for. I'm saying fuck feminist philosophy for trying to understand intimate partner violence. Obviously, there's a bias there. Okay? Now, if we want to study it, let's study it. This is why, like, Tommy Curry has a problem with, black studies in its current incarnation. The problem is we're not actually studying black people. All we're doing is going back and forth with political arguments and philosophical, ideological arguments. And it brings us nowhere closer. It's not moving the needle to helping us improve the dysfunction in our communities.
Right.
This is an issue. This is a problem. And then also what we have a problem with people and their understanding of race. Now, if you and the only reason I'm referring to Curry here is because you seem to have some sort of esteem and you hold him in high regard. Okay?
Yeah.
Now, all Curry is basically asserting is that, look, when you look at racism primarily is a form, in its most lethal and visceral manifestations, it's a form of misandric aggression. And this applies across race. Any type of arbitrary set discrimination, you're going to find that it's going to have males be the primary targets of it. Like across history and across geographical locations, across nationalities, and whatever the case may be. You're going to find that men attack other men.
Right.
Okay? Out-group men are the most attacked group of people. Okay? Whether it be Asian men, Latino men, it's going to be a man versus man thing. Okay?
Right.
Now, look, we can get sophisticated about this shit, or we can get real about this. So at the end of the day, man, we know how war takes place. We see it in nature. Okay, we see it we're part of the primate family, so to speak. That's
right.
I mean, at least that's how evolutionary biology categorizes us. Like chimps and fucking gorillas. Okay, those are our most recent ancestors. In terms of DNA. How do they act? What do they do? We can observe the shit. Okay? It's called evolutionary biology. I believe we should utilize it. I believe we should use developmental psychology, behavioral psychology. I believe we should be looking at sociology in order to deal with some of the problems that are occurring in our community. I think we need public health professionals. I think we need less literature professors and less philosophers, and we need more people who are actually doing some fucking goddamn concrete research.
Right. I mean, I don't have a problem.
I've never said that women don't have issues. I'm never saying women are never victims. But come on, man, when you talk about rape and you talk about like early sexual debut, who's the group in the black community that, has sex the first? It ain't little black vulnerable girls. It's black boys. And typically it's older women who are having sex with these boys. Like 13 years of age, man. I mean, you're seeing you seen the stories about Coolio, DeRay Davis, Lil Wayne. Sometimes their own fathers are encouraging them to fuck before they ready, before they even have pubic hairs. But a lot of times, it's not just men. It's also women who are doing this shit because nobody forced DeRay Davis. No man was around when DeRay Davis was forced to eat these women's, the little hot box, the wops out.
I mean, I listen. I agree with you there. I mean,
So let me just demonstrate. Okay, so look, I'm not gonna go over this all night though. I just look. All I'm trying to say is I have a problem with the methodology. I have a problem with the epistemology of intersectional feminism, and I have a problem with post-structural thought. First of all. I'll tell you why in a second, but let me just share this, okay? I hope I can actually share it. Share the screen. Chrome tab. I've shown this for like a long period of time, bro. Okay, can you see that on the screen?
Yeah, I can see it. It's kind of far away.
Let me big it up.
Okay.
Okay, so this is what is called a meta. It's like a annotated bibliography. Okay. It's an agglomeration of a whole host of studies, okay? And ultimately, this was put together by an expert in the field of domestic violence, okay? And this is true across all races. And this is what he comes to. References examining assaults by women on their spouses or male partners in updated annotated bibliography. Martin S. Fiber. Now, he's not the person writing all these articles. This is an agglomeration of a whole host of articles, over 300, okay? Studying a population of over 440,000 people. Now, it's not the sum totality of all people, okay? But that's a large sample population, very large when it comes to social science, okay? Right. So this bibliography basically demonstrates that women are as physically aggressive as men or more in their relationships with their spouses or opposite sex partners. So, I mean, the list is extensive. Right. I'll leave a link to the motherfucker. Basically, it's Martin Fiber. This is out there for anyone to see. Okay? Now, this doesn't mention feminist philosophy. It doesn't talk about oppression of men or women. It's just data. Okay? It's not trying to say that women are oppressors or anything like that. You will never find that in any of this literature. All it details is, here's what's happening. Here's a phenomenon we want to study. Here is empirical data related to the phenomena that we want to study. Okay, so now we know what's actually occurring. How do we do something about it? Now, either we can politicize it, predicated upon ideology, or perhaps maybe we can actually study it for what it is and do something to mediate it on grounds that are actually going to ameliorate the problem. Okay? So, I mean, this is just, and some of these studies are done by women. It's not just men who are doing this. Okay? It's not just men putting this shit together. It's men and women putting this shit together. Okay? So, and also, I don't want to say stuck here. Okay? But one of the things I do want to talk about, and then we gonna, because we 2 hours into this, and at least you came on the show and you had the conversation, so I thank you for that. Appreciate you coming to talk about it. And you're not the only Negro or the only male or man, black man, who has these opinions. Okay, I just so happen to have a different set of opinions based upon experiences that I've had and so on and so forth. But I mean, at the end of the day, you kind of made a derogatory statement about red pill thinking and men who think like red pill men. Because, I just heard you say that in the course of a conversation we were having. Right. Okay? So tell me a little bit about what you think red pill thinking actually is.
I don't know. I know it's something that kind of originated out of the white nationalist, white supremacist sector of the internet. As far as much as I've encountered it, and I've said this, it's not to say that
brothers don't make valid points and don't have valid critiques and concerns and things of that nature. Now, just looking at it, it seems that any man who manages to have a family and maintain his family and isn't online trying to gain masculinity points by putting down his wife or putting down women, they'll call this man a simp. They'll impugn this man's masculinity. I mean, if we want to talk about feminists and their misandry comes from so-called red pill thinking men all the time. You know what I'm saying? They had a field day with Will Smith, amongst
I had a
others.
field day with his ass too. I think it was some bullshit what he did.
But misandry is misandry. If we're gonna call it out, then we got to call it out on all sides. I think and that's not to say that red pill brothers can't have their thinking on it and stuff like that. I'm just merely calling it like I see it, right? And so, that's basically just been my interaction with these so-called red pillars and stuff like that, right? And the thing that I don't like about it is it goes back to what you would mention when you were talking about Black nationalism and what helped to collapse Black nationalism, and it's absolutely true. And that's just the sectarianism and how fractured we've become. And the way I look at it, this is nothing but another form or another means by which we become more fractured and more segmented. And you see it all the time. We're categorizing yourself as a red pill, categorizing that brother as a blue pill. And now we have these philosophical differences on the world and the nature of women and things like that. That doesn't do anything with moving the needle in terms of many of the issues that you laid down, that you were talking about from an empirical basis. Now, when I'm having my discourse with these so-called red pill men, all they seem to care about is women. All they seem to care about is sex. They don't care nothing at all about the nature of power, how you were just laying it out, how power isn't a monopoly. It's always in a state of flux. It's always being competed for. They don't care to learn anything about the nature of racism, identity politics, structuralism, post-structuralism. I'm not a philosopher, but I am tangentially familiar with those schools of thoughts and things of that nature, right? So a lot of times I just look when I'm looking, they're talking about the same stuff over and over again, and a lot of it has to do with these women that they want, who just so happen not to want them, and they'll just latch themselves on to many of the issues that you raise that I believe are valid, and they'll just use that as justification just to talk about these sisters ad nauseum. I did a video 4 years ago, and I titled it "On the Chessboard of White Supremacy, White Men Have Two Queens, Black Men Have None." So I understand the types of political gamesmanship that they've used in using sisters to deplete our political will and our cohesiveness with a lot of the ideas that sisters have bought into. And the only point that I make in terms of that is brothers have bought into it too. And when I'm talking about that, I'm talking specifically about this whole red pill thing. Like when I'm looking at it and when I'm giving my assessments and my judgments, I'm talking from you're
talking from your experience with having conversations with various guys in the space.
Well, that, and I'm coming from the perspective of a man who's done the family man thing, the nuclear family thing since I was 19. Nobody forced me to do it. That's what I wanted to do, right? And a lot of times it's not because I don't identify with the whole thing of what we believe the role of men to be, but I'm coming from a place of being pragmatic and what actually works.
Okay, so let me stop you here. Let me put you on pause for a second. Okay. I would never knock a guy from having a wife. Right. I mean, if you got a good one, you fucking around, y'all got to understand in a cool relationship. Cool. That's on you. Like, I mean, like the idea, there are married men in this space and they not going off on their wives and shit like that. Right. You know what I'm saying? They not like, okay, I got my wife barefoot and pregnant in the house and she better do what the fuck I say. I'm gonna smack the shit out of her. That's a stereotype and a caricature of the kind of debate and the kind of ideals being, imparted and, kind of being debated about and conversed about here. I mean,
Right.
to reduce the space to woman bashing, black women bashing haters. I mean, do some men here have animus and venom toward black women? Yeah.
Yeah.
And a lot of them, rightfully so, because they've been fucked over by them.
But they not only, but my point though with Green Gorillas, they not only do they have that towards sisters, they have it towards other black men. Look, when I came into the space, I didn't have this categorization thing where you had we're the good men, we're the educated lames, and over there's the Pookie and Ray Ray. Something I talk about the fact that black men are many times the most unemployed. If you go into any urban black area, predominantly black area, you're going to find a gender ratio asymmetry. This they'll never talk about how structurally the way we're laid out spatially, where it reinforces the 80-20 rule. They do that on purpose. That's on purpose, but they'll never want to have that conversation that calls to carpet the white supremacist framework that we're existing in as black people up until this day. And so then when I do bring those things up, they'll say it's pandering. They'll say it's simping. When no, if we really want to repair anything that's going on in our communities, then you have to deal with that. That's a part of the structure. The structure is the way we are laid out, the way we are structured in the society. It's in a way to precipitate this kind of dysfunction, this kind of division, and these kind of arguments that we're having. But it seems as though nobody wants to address that 1,000-pound gorilla in the room. And
let me put it this way. Let me ask you a question.
Okay.
What content in the black manosphere have you heard make the case that marriage, in and of it, if a man is married, in and of itself, he is a simp just because on the account that he's married?
I'm not gonna sit here and be disingenuous. I haven't heard like content. I'm talking about when I'm having my back and forth. This is what they'll tell me, and I'm merely may just be.
But if you're saying that this is what they're telling you, you have to be able to tell me what man has asserted that having a wife in and of itself makes you a simp. Not only that, I want you to articulate to me which particular content creator have you heard in this space make the argument that white supremacy is not a problem.
I don't want to say that. I don't want to call names.
This is out. And if they say that white supremacy is not a problem at all, I will call them a coon.
Okay. What Obsidian makes that argument all the time that we're no longer under racism. Racism is merely episodic. It's not still a part of the overall society that we exist in. Obsidian, many of Obsidian's followers who follow his content and his train of thought. You have a lot of brothers who would, the whole educated lame type of dudes. They align themselves with that. That's really the main issue I have with the whole red pill philosophy is in my view, it's not like I said, moving the needle forward in terms of how do we get back on track as black people socially, politically, and economically. Even if we want to talk about feminists and stuff like that, black feminism and stuff like that, I've had my critiques and my debates and criticisms with black feminists. Yet these brothers will still call me a feminist merely because I'll acknowledge the fact that, just like how you just said it, that black men and black women are going to have different life experiences relative to their gender. Now, that doesn't make me a feminist just because I acknowledge that these sisters ain't lying. Like all these black women aren't lying, and I've made the same counter argument.
So let me stop you there. So if those black women are not lying, all the black men in the manosphere are.
And that's not what I said. What I'm saying is, just like I said, these brothers aren't lying either. Because I'll listen to what brothers are saying. And a lot of times when I give like just my assessment and my take on it, I try and come down the middle. And when I do try and come down the middle, I'm attacked. I've been attacked from the woman's side. I've been attacked from the man's side. And what I'm merely giving is the prescription that I've used for my
Okay, so
family.
I think I see what you're trying to do here, bro. You have there's not a name for you, but I call you the Great Faith. There is a name. I mean, it's derogatory, but it ain't a simp. I would call you a hotep.
Okay.
You basically want the black community to be together so much, so hardcore, then you're trying to run the middle line so that you can bring both parties together.
Yeah, there you go.
However, I think you're getting into a fight in the hood, and I know you don't want to take a side because you love your wife, and that's fine. Okay. Yeah. Hope much success for you. Hope you stay together for 100 years. Right. I'm not asking for the dissolution of marriages amongst people who have them.
Right.
I'm not. That's not the type of motherfucking shit I'm on. Okay?
Right.
What I'm on is this. If black women for the past fucking 40 to 50 years have been utilizing, and you can look at Curry to demonstrate this, especially, the women in the academy, the professional black woman, okay?
Right.
She's been utilizing subculture of violence theory for 40 to 50 years to promote and to caricaturize stereotypes about black men. And the impact and the effect that it has is that we become more heavily surveilled by the state. Okay? Right. Another effect of it is that, and this is what me and BGS have been trying to tell you, we've been trying to articulate this shit for quite a bit of time. Men want to be a part of families, but oftentimes the sole discretion on who and who is not a member of the family is directly predicated upon the desires and the wishes of the woman. This didn't used to be the case solely and exclusively, okay? But it is today. And
what's changed? Why is that the way it is now? What's changed? Is it? I mean, I'm trying to figure out if that wasn't always the case. Why is it the case now?
Well, we've been trying to articulate to you, Amiri, okay, that there's been a long history of court cases, ideologies, philosophies, cultural patterns that have brought us to the point at which we are now. One of the things we tried to articulate to you, look, I'm not here to try to hair split about patriarchy. Okay. Right. But what I can tell you is, just like BGS came up with a document the other day kind of detailing, how we got to the point at which men are no longer considered to be the custodians of children. It's quite natural for a person to assume that, hey, it's women who are the natural caretakers and, they're the ones who have the primary responsibility for the development of the lives of children, okay? It just seems quite natural to argue that, okay, either from a legal perspective or from a natural position, primarily because of the social conditions in which we exist and that obtain now. And so therefore, because we haven't seen anything different, it's all we know and it seems natural. Okay. So at the end of the day, what we tried to demonstrate is this. Can't say it's the case for black folks, but we can say it's the case for white folks. That prior to a series of legal precedents and doctrines, men were considered to be the sole stewards and custodians of children. Not women, men. Okay? In Western culture, this is a historical fact. Now you can say, okay, that's the patriarchy. Let's call it that. Okay? Okay. At a microcosmic, so there's the point I'm really trying to make is you can look at, and I said this on BGS's show, you can either look at microcosmic patriarchy, if you want to define it that way, the way second wave feminists do, okay? You can look at it from a macro or a micro perspective, okay? The micro perspective is the family. like interpersonal relationships between men and women. Okay? Now, on that micro or that interpersonal relationship between men and women, increasingly, men have lost custodial power over children. It's the woman who decides whether she wants to be in a relationship or not, and whether or not the man will have access to the children. These are the facts, man. So the red pill that I know, look, the only red pill references I've ever had before entering into this space as a content creator were the Matrix movie, okay, and a documentary developed by a white feminist named Cassie J. I don't know if you've ever had the opportunity to watch that fucking documentary, but it's on YouTube, okay? Or it's on Vimeo or whatever the case may be, all right? And it tracks her journey in having various conversations with white men's rights activists, okay? That's all the shit really actually is. Now, you're going to have all kind of men in the manosphere. It's a social media. You're going to have motherfuckers saying any and everything. It's just the nature of where you at. And you know this.
Yeah.
This is what you're gonna hear that. But here's some of the shit that was detailed. So the white woman was a feminist, and she was having these conversations with all these white dudes. Okay? And they were talking about the kind of exigencies and the problems that exist for men. Okay, and one of the people who started this was not Will Ferrell, but I can never fucking remember his Warren Farrell. His name is Warren Farrell. Okay, he wrote a book, The Boy Crisis, and a whole host of other books related to like the positionality of men and the disadvantages that men suffer from. Okay, so let me show you some of these facts. Okay. And then we're going to have to close this off, man. I can't be here all goddamn day, but I'm here for a little bit. Let me see. I don't celebrate the 4th of July. I don't do that, man. Fuck these white folks with this bullshit.
Right.
I ain't fuck all that. I ain't popping no fireworks or nothing. All right, so you see that?
Yeah.
You see that? Do you see it good?
Yeah, I can see it, yeah.
Hold on, let me make it a little bit bigger because it is kind of small. It should be bigger now. Can you see it better now?
Yeah, I can see it. Yeah, I can see it better now. Yeah.
Okay. This is from the woman who. This is like a little factoid piece that the woman, she was a feminist, but she stopped being a feminist after having made the documentary and receiving flack from feminists. Because, like, feminists attack each other all the time, bro. Like, if you don't follow the ideological line, you think it's bad in the manosphere, boy, start saying some shit that's outside of the line of feminist thinking and watch them motherfucking cats go at it. They'll start cutting and scratching each other. Might even bomb each other or some shit. But anyway, let me minimize it because I made it too big. The other half. So in honor of International Men's Day, the documentary film The Red Pill would like to illustrate some of the issues that uniquely or disproportionately affect men in the United States. Workplace deaths. 93% of them are men. A disproportionate share of fatal work injuries in the U.S. were men relative to their hours worked, and this is in 2016. The workplace fatality rate for men was 5.8 deaths per 100,000 full-time workers. The rate for women was 0.6, okay? Men die by suicide 3.53 times more often than women. Almost 45,000 people die by suicide every year in the U.S., making it the 10th leading cause of death. In 2016, there were more than twice as many suicides in the U.S. as there were homicides. So we say homicide is a problem, but you got men killing themselves more than their own selves, more than they're killing each other.
Okay.
Veterans account for 20% of all suicides. On average, 22 veterans take their lives each day. While women attempt suicide more often than men, they use less lethal methods like poisoning or overdose, while men use firearms, things like firearms.
Right.
Okay? 1 in 6 men have been sexually abused or assaulted. We now know that the number is the ratio is a little bit larger. This is like 1/6, but we know it's now like 1/4. Okay, 1 in 4 men in the U.S. have experienced rape, physical violence, and or stalking by an intimate partner in their lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
Yet there are only 2 shelters in the U.S. specifically for male victims of domestic abuse. Of the 2,000 shelters that serve women, most turn away men, and in some cases turn away boys as young as 12 years old. Okay? She says highlighting these statistics is not in any way meant to downplay violence against women. It is, however, intended to add that the growing conversation that anyone can be a victim of domestic abuse and everyone who needs protection deserves access to it. Men receive 63% more prison time compared to women convicted of the same crime. 100+ infant boys die every year in the U.S. due to circumcision. Now, I mean, this is a cultural issue, but one can argue, like, you start cutting off a woman's clitoris or cutting at it, you'd have an issue with it. But today, we routinely and regularly cut off the foreskin of boys before they even reach puberty. Okay,
and then they sell that foreskin off too, because after they do that, that foreskin continues to grow, and they'll sell it. Ain't that something?
Man, that's crazy. But about 1/3 of men are circumcised globally, but in the U.S., newborn circumcision is widely practiced and for predominantly non-religious reasons. Oh, I don't like the way his dick gonna look. I gotta cut that foreskin off. It's gonna look ugly or something like that. Like, imagine if a man said that to a woman. I don't like the way that all your labia look. You gotta cut parts of that off. So
And even with the feminists, they'll talk about female genital mutilation, and they'll talk about it as a feature of patriarchy. But the people who practice that and enforce that in those countries is often women doing it to other women. That's something they'll never go into.
Okay, so now we gain at some level a modicum of agreement on some issues. Okay, but not all. But I don't propose to agree with everybody or whatever the case may be. Anyway, only 1 in 6 of custodial parents are the father. Just think about that shit. We talking about the patriarchy and how men run shit. But if it ain't men running it, who the fuck is running it? If men are not the custodial parents and are not running shit, who's running it by default?
Well, just trying to say women. I mean,
that's just a fact, bro. Look, if you got 2 people that could potentially be in a household, the decisions, if they are made, either one motherfucker gonna have his way or the other not, or there's gonna be consensus. There's no other options between that. But if you're the only person in the fucking household and you're not a custodial parent, your fucking view, what you say, it really don't mean jack shit. And if it's the case that 17.5% of men are custodial parents, whereas 82.5% of women are custodial parents, they have a fucking female patriarchy, microcosmically. Not macrocosmically, but microcosmically. Meaning, as it pertains to intimate and social family life, they are ruling the fucking roost. It just is what it is. It is what it is.
And that's and this would be with divorced and singled individuals, right? What we're looking at right here.
Of course. Like, I mean, if you're in a situation with your wife, hopefully you can reach some consensus about what you do on a whole host of things. I know you're going to have disagreements because there ain't no perfect fucking person who can agree with themselves across time. So you're not going to agree with another person across time. It's impossible.
Right.
So I ain't even trying to, excuse me, I'm not even trying to go there. But the fact of the matter remains, only 1 in 6 of custodial parents are fathers. And if that's the case, then the custodians of children overwhelmingly are women, meaning they're running and governing the development and the socialization of children the way they see fit. Now, it's not always, the consequences are not always optimal, because we know that a lack of fatherlessness creates a whole host of dysfunctions and problems. But I'm not going to even go there right now, okay? I'm just going through this shit, okay?
Okay.
More than 1 in 4 fathers with children 18 or younger live apart from their children. Veterans. 13.4% of all male Americans have served in the armed forces, whereas only 1.6% of female Americans have ever served in the armed forces. Okay? Look, it all depends on how you want to go with this. Look, I'm a person like who basically asserts, if you're going to get rid of the patriarchy, you got to get rid of all the shit. Ain't no, well, we get preferential treatment when it comes to sentencing, or we get housing and benefits and shit like that. Fuck all that. You know what I'm saying? Like, if it's we living in we smashing the patriarchy all the way through and through, we need parity and equality all the way through and through. Shit, in Israel, if you a female, your ass got to get in the fucking goddamn army. Ain't no opting out. Well, I'm a lady. I like my nails and my hair done and shit. Fuck all that. You about to go serve. It just is what it is. So I believe if you're going to have a social and political equality, you got to take equality of risk. That's just my opinion. That's my viewpoint on that. Okay? Veterans make up over 9% of the homeless population in the U.S. I mean, and she says learn more about watching the Red Pill movie. I mean, I'm not here to promote her shit for real. All I'm saying is the Red Pill movie is not talking about fuck these bitches, I can't stand these hoes, none of that. All it's saying is that when you look at the reality of the phenomenological experiences of men, you don't see that it's all fucking roses. There's a lot of pathology, there's a lot of circumstances that exist that put men at extreme disadvantages in relation to women. And all we're saying is, look, I don't personally call myself a red pill thinker, okay? But I am a person who's a black masculinist. I am that, okay? And I'm only that in response to extremities. I'm Rambo. I didn't draw first blood, but if you're going to start it, I'm going to end it with the truth. I'm not going to sit here and disparage you, talk about you derogatorily or derisively if you're a black woman. Okay? Now, if you're on some bitch shit, I'm going to tell you that. But if you're a nigga and you're on some nigga shit or some coon shit, I'm going to tell you that. Okay. I don't believe I should pull my punches and put on gloves because I'm dealing with somebody who just so happens to have a uterus and mammary glands. Now all of a sudden I have to change my thought process, my thinking patterns, and I have to show deference and treat them like children. No, I'm not treating a grown-ass woman like a child and softening up and, becoming something, more congenial and polite precisely because, she can't really actually hack it. That's bullshit to me.
Okay.
I'm gonna talk to, people pretty much the same. I'm gonna show everybody respect, pretty much the same, until you disrespect me.
Okay.
Now, if you start disrespecting me, look, either I'm from a place where beef get real. It ain't about fucking joking and laughing and, in exchanging insults and shit like that. It's about, okay, guess what? You start talking shit, all right, I'll be back. I'll holler at you.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I feel you on that, which is why I think it's particularly dangerous when people dox and do stuff like that, trying to get people personal information, because that can be perceived as a threat. That you're doing that to threaten somebody. So I ain't
trying to threaten you or nobody else. I'm just saying where I come from. This is a fact. Come from Kossuth and Fair in St. Louis, Missouri. Okay? It ain't about, bruh, this is my thinking, right? You know how people are, man. Men or women. If you keep fucking with a dog, just keep slapping his mouth, what's going to end up happening to you?
It's going to bite you.
It's going to bite you. So that's why I don't engage in that fuckery. Now, I will talk about public figures here and there, but you won't hear me going off on them, name calling and shit like that, unless they really piss me the fuck off.
Right.
Okay? But typically, I don't engage in that sort of behavior. But at the end of the day, man, all I'm trying to say is, I don't do that shit. I'm gonna have a conversation. I'm gonna put what it is that I think out there, and everybody's not gonna agree with me. Different people have different thought processes. They subscribe to a different set of political beliefs. It is what it is. Okay? Yeah. But my thinking, though, Amiri, this is just a sincere question. If you know you don't agree with the men in this space, then why are you here fucking with them? Why are you here why are you interacting with these guys?
Well, how am I the one, messing with them? Like because a lot of it goes down on Facebook, and so if I'm on my page and I make a post and it triggers you a certain type of way to respond, I'm not in control of that. I'm merely just saying what I'm saying because I might just be thinking about something. I may have just read an article or seen a video, and so I might just be coming from there when I'm making my content. But then if I do that, and then you respond a certain type of way, and then you like, let's just be honest, many of these brothers aren't read enough to articulate why they disagree based on the merits of the point. So what they do is they do ad hominem. They're going to call you a simp. They're going to call you a cuck. They're going to use all these other misandric pejoratives to somehow impugn your masculinity or manhood. So like, I'm not in control of that at that point. Like you laid out,
but you are in control of it by continuously going back and forth with it. Well, well, let me say this shit. It was a motherfucker, and I'm gonna talk about this guy because I'm gonna have the last word. It ain't you,
okay?
But it's a white motherfucker. See, I make lo-fi hip hop music and all kind of other music. All right. Okay. So a white guy came on my shit, telling me that I'm stealing other people's music. And to be fair to him, I mean, he might not know it, but like I subscribe to a service called Splice that has royalty-free samples. I take them, chop them up, screw them, put shit on top of it, put shit over it, add my own keys to it. But it's a business that operates so people like me can utilize it. Right. Now, I'm not the only person who can utilize these samples. Somebody else can take them and use them because they're royalty-free. Okay? But he coming on saying I'm stealing people's shit. No, motherfucker, I'm paying for it.
Right.
I got the license to do this.
Right.
I'm 007 with this. So who the fuck are you coming in talking to me and telling me how I can and how I can't use it? And you know what I did to him? I removed this fucking comment and blocked him.
Okay.
I don't have to entertain shit I don't agree with.
Right.
I don't have to fuck around with people I don't fuck around with.
Right.
Now, I am going to go off on this dude, but like it's going to be a one and done. I'm not going to keep going back and forth. I definitely ain't going to keep fucking around. Like say, for example, I grow up in a Crip neighborhood. I'm not going to keep running around where the blood's hanging at, where I know they fuck around at.
Right.
I'm just personally, because I know what that's going to lead to. I'm not like, if they on some ignorant shit, I'm going to be like, fuck them niggas. And then I'm going to keep pushing. But that's just me, though. Like, I'm not going to feminist pages and shit and having arguments and debates with them about their talking points. Now, I would like to have conversations with these persons, but I want them to be like the type of conversation I'm having with you. I'm not going to be like, okay, well, fuck you. Well, fuck. I'm like, if it get to that point, then there is no conversation. There's semantic noise. There's a blockage in communication.
Yeah.
There's no need for me to continue. So I'm not going,
Well, no, I mean, I understand that. Now, one of the things I was trying to do, I'm trying to do with my channel is create a neutral space, a safe space for, both sides of the aisle, as it were, to come and have, and have these conversations, and for it not to devolve into what we've become accustomed to just over the past few years, with this whole gender war and stuff like that. So that's what I've tried to do just with my channel. Like I'm not going to be a rubber stamp for feminists or black women, and I'm not going to be a rubber stamp for black men or even black masculinists. When I see things a certain type of way, I'm going to give my viewpoint on whatever it is we're discussing. You know what I'm saying? If I agree, then I agree, and if I disagree, I disagree, and I'll articulate why I disagree. That's what I try and do. But I get what you're saying. But I don't like, one of the things I don't like is how I get painted with the brush of being a troll or being antagonistic. Like when I'm making my posts and stuff like that, I don't know who's going to identify with a certain type of, if they're red pill or if they're feminist. Like I just might say something and then,
Come on,
people
Amiri, you a grown ass nigga, dog. Like, I don't mean that derisively. I mean that like how motherfuckers from where I'm from talk.
Yeah.
You grown, bro.
Yeah.
You know if you engaging in entertaining fuckery or not. Or you know when you engaged in fuckery or not. You know if you trolling or not, or whether you being petty or not. Like everybody knows this, bro. I know if I'm doing it. Like tomorrow, I'm about to be petty. But it's only because I don't like white boys who gentrified hip hop coming back saying Negroes stealing shit when they the original fucking stealers. In fact, your fucking population is the stealers of a whole bunch of millions of Negroes from one landmass to another.
Right.
So don't come to me with taking or stealing nothing. So I'm gonna talk about that shit tomorrow. But at the end of the day, man, I'm gonna keep this, we're gonna cut it short, man, and let people get to what they getting to.
Right. Well, I appreciate the time in the conversation. This was a good build. I learned some things from you, and that's always the goal for me, is to leave a conversation or interaction better informed than what I was when I came to it. So that's always the goal for me when I have these discourses.
And look, I'm not always right. My views are amenable to revision. I just wish that a whole bunch of other people in the black community at the present moment would have the same view and the same amount of understanding. I'm a person who's amenable to reason and argumentation. I feel like I am. Right. What I'm not amenable to is fuck nigga shit. I'm not amenable to that. Like I don't play. Man, I'm a grown ass man out here. I don't play them type of games. Okay, like I'll state what I gotta state and definitively end the shit. But at the end of the day, bro, you got your views. They are what they are. I have my views. They are what they are. I am a black masculinist. Look, do I think that women in and of themselves, are innately and ontologically evil and fucked up? No. But I definitely don't think that about black men. And it seems like though we consistently characterized as problematic and never characterized as innately caring, loving, kind, supportive, sacrificing, honorable. Those kind of adjectives are never thrown around. It's just like the dusty, crusty shit.
Right.
And I'm here, I'm like, that's bullshit. Like if you come out the table being non-reciprocitous, what the fuck do you expect?
Well, yeah, I agree with you there. I had a video I did 4 years ago called "Black Fathers, Kings Among Men." Got like maybe 400 views. It just is what it is. Our internet diet is a lot of the things that we shouldn't consume, but it's what we consume. Like the positive stuff and stuff like that. It just doesn't get the same traction. And you see it like that bears itself out with the content that people do. And the reason why so many people do the whole, gender banging content is because it's lucrative for them. It's going to be a lot more lucrative than any of the things that you just mentioned, because, we don't want to portray black men in a particular type of light, just, culturally, socially, politically, economically, like even, and I've said this, even though I may have had my differences with Kevin Samuels, you'll never find any video of me putting his name in the title, impugning his masculinity or his sexuality, any of those things, because I understand that there's a larger agenda at play to portray all Black men as fundamentally incapable of leadership or leading anything or having any type of authority. I understand that. So I've always tried to be measured with my with my dissenters and detractors as much as I could be. And every now and then I'll get into the nigga shit. I got a bad habit of doing that, so I'm trying to clean that up too. But I am aware of what you just talked about. I'm aware of it.
Circumscribe your actions, man. You know what I'm saying? You know,
Yeah.
you know what it is, man. You know when you let a motherfucker get to you or not. And the
Right.
question is whether or not you gonna, you know, I ain't trying to use the term man up because I don't believe that that's actually, you know, like a term that I would use. I don't believe in that man up shit for real. You know, that's bullshit to me. But at the end of the day, man, you got to motherfucking circumscribe, you know, yourself, man. Control your passions, man.
Right.
And subdue yourself, man. Just control your passions and subdue yourself. And not only that, you know, look, at the end of the day, I believe that your sex, we can talk about gender, but I believe your sex is an accident and the luck of the draw. Before you're born, you have no choice on whether you're going to be male or female. You don't grow up in a boss baby state, pre-born state with a whole host of consciousness able to make decisions.
Right.
You fucking born as an agglomeration of cells and you form based upon accidents of nature that you have no control over. And if you don't have control over something, I don't believe that you should have any kind of moral praiseworthiness allocated to you on that account, male or female. So I take virtue and vice as something that is equally capacious for both men and women, or gay or straight, or black or white, or red or brown or whatever other color that can, you know, emerge out of nature itself. At the end of the day, both men and women have the capacity to exhibit either virtue or vice. They often do both. I just wish we would be able to acknowledge something different other than the whole gender banging shit. But if you gonna gender bang, I got the gender bang. If you're telling lies about me, see the whole point, it ain't even so much as telling lies, it's telling half the truth. See, the devil don't tell straight lies. They only give you smidges of the truth and act like that's the whole sum totality of the truth. I don't move like that. If you're gonna air the dirty laundry, let's air all of it. Like that Amber Heard woman who recently, you know, got sued by Johnny Depp. She in the house shitting on his bed, throwing bottles at him and all this, but she out in the public talking about violence against women while she in the house being violent as a motherfucker and disrespectful.
Right.
I don't think, you know, and I don't think like it ain't, I don't move like that. We got to tell the whole truth. You can't drill out half the cavity in a tooth and then fill it up and act like you're going to get a fix to the situation. You got to drill all the cavity out of it. Right. So if we're going to talk about some shit that's vicious, let's talk about all of it, not just some of it, not just that on account of men related to some arcane or some, you know, idealistic notion of patriarchy. Fuck that. We got to talk about all the ugliness. And I believe it should be a space for us to talk about all that ugliness. So at the end of the day, man, I bid y'all farewell, man. Thank you for at least coming.
Okay.
To have a conversation. And I didn't think this was gonna be a debate. I don't like all this debate shit. Like it sets it up like there's a winner. I don't give a fuck about winning a debate. I give a fuck about trying to tease out the truth when I have conversations.
Right.
That's all I try to do. I don't always come out of the conversation in full agreement, but all that debating shit, basically that's a zero-sum game. It's a winner and a loser. Right. I'm trying to find the truth. That's why That's why I'm a philosopher, dude. It is what it is. So at the end of the day, man, y'all be peaceful. Shout out to everybody out there in the chat, man. Good mother, keep it 100. I know y'all got beef, but us fucks with him, man. Nigel Ados, Marvel Cousins, Cortez Smith, Jafar, Ghetto User, NB, a whole host of guys out there. David Price, y'all all be good. Heru, Aten Patah, all y'all be peaceful out there. Mrs. Sunkiss, Miss Sunkiss, man, how you gonna ask me for money on my Cash App? I was like, I thought she donated $5, then she asked for $5. I'm like, really? How you gonna play me like that? But anyway, Herb Saint, I hear you, Nola, baby. I'll holler at you later. Mr. Donnie Mac, Uncle Fire, Nagoran 11, Door, man, all y'all just be peaceful, man. I can't go down this whole list. It's too long, man. But y'all be peaceful, man. I'll holler at y'all on the next one, man. Thank you for coming again, bro. You know what I'm saying? It is what it is. Thank you for coming, man.
Yeah, you have a good one.
Have a good one, man. And, look, I'm about to sign you off, bro. Peace out, my bro.
All right.
So, all right. So, y'all be peaceful out here, man. I'll holler at y'all on the next one, man. Word.